Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Scala, every Saturday night on the LNM Network from 9 p.m. to midnight. And now your host, Scala.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill.
Oh, hello and welcome everyone. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. It is an honor and privilege to have you tune in, and thank you for taking the time to do that. Greatly appreciate it. Tonight I'm going to have a couple of different people on with me. I'm going to have somebody that I had the honor and privilege of meeting personally, David Callihan. And I was looking for that clip that some of you may remember. There was a movie many years ago, and the guy's name was Callihan, and they called him Dirty Harry. And I was looking for that clip. You feel lucky, punk? I couldn't find it. Anyway, so we'll have David on, and we're going to have John Ainsworth on. And John is a gentleman who's very familiar with... Well, I'll let him explain it. I think it's very interesting. We're going to have some very interesting conversation tonight. We're going to present some ideas, and I think if people will take this seriously, we might really be able to make a big difference in the return of our country. Because many years ago, I learned a lesson when I was working. I had just gotten out of the service, and I went to work for Radio Shack. And the particular one that I went to work for was not a corporate-owned Radio Shack. It was an individually owned Radio Shack, and they were teaching me, training me how to be a manager. And one of the first lessons I learned was if you take care of the pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves. And so along that line, we have these, David had an idea that him and I had a conversation about it. If we want to get our country back, we've got to start at the local level. If we take care of the pennies, the little things first, then all the big things, all that stuff all the way up there to Washington, D.C. will take care of itself. So we'll be talking about that tonight as well. This past week was, of course, September the 11th. A tough memory for me. I'm sure a tough memory for many people who lived through that. It's hard to imagine that there are teenagers that think of it only as a history, a story in history. It's hard to imagine what we went through. I mean, all the different emotions that occurred that day. I remember being on the phone with my brother and asking him, "What are you doing?" I'm getting ready to leave the house. I said, "Don't leave the house. Go back in the house now. Go back in the house, turn the TV on, and don't get off the phone." Throughout the course of the conversation, I remember the second building coming down. The first building, I don't recall. One of the buildings coming down looked like a banana peeling. I think it was the second one. Looked like a banana, literally to me, it just looked like a banana peeling, like somebody was peeling it apart. I had no idea about explosives or thermite or any of that stuff, gas dustification, none of that. All I knew is what I looked at just didn't look right. And they were saying that it was being caused by a failure of the beams due to heat caused by jet fuel when the buildings were designed to withstand 2 aircrafts hitting them. So it just burned away at me, It would not go away. It was just a gnawing feeling in me. Something's not right about this whole thing. Now, mind you, prior to all of this, I didn't give a hoot about politics. I didn't care about the president. Don't bother me with all that nonsense, garbage. Didn't want to have anything to do with any of that stuff. So I was kind of, in a way, fat, dumb, and happy, if you will. Like a lot of people were, asleep. I called it being asleep at the wheel with your eyes wide open. How dangerous is that? If you've ever been out there driving and you get driver's fatigue and your eyes begin to close on you as you're traveling, some people travel 70, 80 miles an hour. How dangerous is that? Well, imagine how dangerous this is when our country is headed for disaster and the people at the helm have their eyes open, but they're asleep. And the people who drive all of this don't have a clue. So it's pretty eye-opening for me because I couldn't get 9/11 out of my mind. I watched it. I think that was probably right around the time, around 2002, I stopped watching television because I couldn't digest it anymore. And I began to look online to see if I could find information online about what was going on out there. And I ran across a document. A document was on a government site. I've saved the document. Anybody who asks me, I'll have a copy of it. A document on a government site talking about the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Now, the Gulf of Tonkin incident is what led to the Vietnam War. And this document basically described that this incident was really kind of made up, so to speak. We just kind of needed a war, so we kind of made it up. Like weapons of mass destruction, you remember that? Like, why are we still in Afghanistan? If the whole reason we went to Afghanistan was to get Osama bin Laden. We got him years ago, supposedly. Right? Isn't that what we've been told? So why are we still there? Why are we still in Iraq? What are we doing in Libya? It's simple. When I discovered that the war that I was involved in, and I was gung-ho, I mean, back then I was a whopping 18 years old. I knew it all. You couldn't tell me anything. It was Vietnam. We've got to take them out. The communists are no good. When I found out that the war that I served in, believing that I was doing the right thing, as many, probably 99% of them that are involved in these things believe, you know. When I found out that it was all based on a lie, that it was all pre-planned, I thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown. I couldn't believe the reality that I was just slapped in the face with. This can't be. I had to reread that document. I had to make sure I was on. This is really a government site? .gov. It took a lot out of me. It changed me overnight because I realized that I had been asleep. And while I had been asleep, people within the government that I served were literally criminals. Literally criminals. No different than the man who would hold a gun to your head, but they are far more dangerous because they have a pen. I found out that there's a plan in place for us to be in constant war. And all of this is based on 9/11. All of it. Everything that we're going through is based on 9/11. Our president was there. I don't know if he was there that day or the next day, but he made some comments that day. He explained that he had heard explosions, and that he also made the comment that just the plane itself can't bring this building down. Now, he wasn't the president back then, of course, but he was and is a builder and knows intimately about buildings, the structures. And he would explain to the person he was speaking with at that time that these particular buildings, unlike a lot of other high-rises, the strength was on the outside of the building. The structural portion of the building was built on the outside. He said that is the strongest way to build a building, according to him. That's far more stable than building it from the inside out, which is what they're commonly done. Now, this one had its structural strength on the outside and had a core of 47 columns on the inside of the building. I believe Donald Trump understands. Donald Trump knows. I'm just wondering when he's going to tell us that those buildings did not come down simply by aircraft hitting them. Now, I have created a lot of arguments by saying I don't even believe there were aircrafts. Okay, Rascala, you've lost your mind. We saw it on TV. It has to be true. There's your first mistake right there. You saw it on TV. It must be true. What I think we saw on television were computer graphic images, CGI, that were placed into the live feed so that it would look as though an aircraft had struck those buildings. Now, I described to you just a few moments ago that Donald Trump said, according to his information, the buildings were structurally built from the outside in. They were a combination of hardened steel and concrete reinforced on top of that. Now, the reason I say I don't think there was any aircraft is because if you'll go back and watch any of those videos, you will see that the aircraft literally melts into this building. It miraculously opens a hole into the building in which the aircraft fits. That's physically impossible. Also, if you don't know a lot about aircraft, I can tell you that they are basically a hollow shell of aluminum. The strongest part of the aircraft is located within the engines, and those are the turbines. That has titanium. So that is the heaviest and the strongest metal that is used in the aircraft. The rest of the aircraft is basically a tube, an aluminum tube. Okay, this is an oversimplification, but that's basically what it is. The front of the aircraft, now I know this personally because I did work for 3M Company many years ago with an airline company called Eastern Airlines down in Miami. One of the problems that the aircraft were experiencing is that upon takeoff and landings, pebbles would hit the front of the aircraft. Now, the pebbles would most commonly scrape the paint off of the front of the aircraft and then have to have them repainted again, which was just costly for them, and they were trying to find ways to avoid that. Well, 3M came out with, I believe it or not, they called it a bra that fit over the nose cone of the aircraft. And it was a material that was made out of ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene. Very, very, very slick. Very, if you try to scratch it, it's difficult to scratch. A protective cover, if you will. The nose cones of these aircraft back then were made out of fiberglass. Now, if what I saw on television was in reality what really happened, somebody has to explain to me how an aircraft with a nose cone of fiberglass, and the fiberglass isn't very thick, I have news for you, how an aircraft with a nose cone of fiberglass literally cut a hole into a building that was made out of hardened steel reinforced with concrete. There are pictures on the internet that you can find easily of aircraft that have hit a bird, and it just about totals the front end of the aircraft from a bird. But our government wants us to believe that we saw aircraft enter into these buildings as though the aircraft were a hot knife and the buildings were butter. Just literally melted into this building. Nothing came out. Even the tail section of these aircraft went into the building. Now, the reason I believe there were computer graphic images is if you look around enough, you will find several different videos of the second aircraft. When it hits this building, it goes in one side and comes out the other. Again, this is physically impossible. You're talking about an aircraft that is made out of aluminum that's approximately a 16th to a little more than that, 3/32 of an inch thick. Aluminum versus steel and reinforced concrete going in one side and coming out the other is physically impossible. Not only did it come out the other side, but it spewed out a whole bunch of stuff with it. So somewhere along the line, they did some mess-ups, and the mess-ups are there, and you can see them. If you look for the videos of the second plane hitting the building, you will find a video that shows the building, that shows the aircraft headed towards the building, and as it passes other buildings, if you'll carefully look at the wing of the aircraft, you'll see the wing of the aircraft disappear. This is a common problem when you take a computer graphic image and place it into a moving object. There is evidence that shows what happened on that day. Regardless of what you saw, your eyes were lying to you. I don't think there were any aircraft whatsoever. If it were anything that hit that building, it would have had to have been a torpedo, not a torpedo, a missile. But I don't even think it was missiles. I'm not sure what it was, but I can tell you it was an aircraft, not the way that what we saw. That's simply just not true. Then we look at the dust that was left over, the ashes from these buildings that were carefully and forensically checked out to find that there are remains of thermate. Thermate still unactivated, still alive within the ashes of the buildings. What is thermate? Who has thermate? Where do you get thermate? Thermate is only available, supposedly, to the military. Nobody else can have thermate. A cousin of thermate is thermite. Thermite is very common and is used considerably throughout demolitions of buildings. Thermite goes through steel like a hot knife goes through butter. If you carefully look at any of the pictures from 9/11, after the buildings have come down, there are still pictures on the internet that show beams have been cut at a 45-degree angle. Jet aircraft fuel could not do that. Thermate, which is a stronger version of thermite, could easily do that. In seconds, it can do that. So as we remember 9/11 3 days ago, we should also remember that we weren't told the truth. We should also remember that we should be demanding to know what happened, because what we were told was an absolute outright lie. There is no other way around that. What they expect us to believe is an absolute lie. Some of the things that I learned about 9/11. It was used to terrorize the United States. It was to get the U.S. military into the Middle East. Did you know that CENTCOM already had been moved to the Middle East? Many of the people who were directly involved in the investigation, as well as the actual act, were reported to be dual citizens of the United States. What happened to all the gold? Truckloads of gold missing. Where did that go? What happened to building number 7? Because on September the 11th, 2001, math for the first time in the history of man failed. We had two aircraft bring down 3 buildings. How is that possible? Building number 7 was never struck by an aircraft. Building number 7 mysteriously caught fire. And at approximately 5 p.m. that afternoon, a BBC reporter is reporting live from the area, saying that a third building had come down, building number 7. While the building was still standing behind the reporter, she's reporting the building had come down 20 minutes later. Building number 7 falls into its own footprint at a free fall speed. Now, it has been determined scientifically as well as architecturally that the building was brought down using controlled demolition. There's no question about that any longer. It's not a conspiracy. It is an absolute documented fact. Without question, building number 7 was a classic building demolition. Now, if that is the case, please understand that you cannot simply walk into a building and bring it down into its own footprint within a matter of hours. A matter of hours would be the research that you do to find out where the vital components of the building are in order to bring them down into proper time so that the building falls accordingly. It takes weeks to do something like that. And if I am correct, and it does take weeks, what kind of questions does that leave to be answered? Who had access to that building? If it took weeks, who was in that building working for weeks at a time? There are reports that the main buildings that came down, that there were upgrades being done, strange upgrades, that an entire floor had been shut down. There are firemen who report explosions repeatedly, while others reported seeing molten steel as though they were in a foundry, flowing like water. Jet fuel can never get hot enough, ever, to promote such a thing. 8 weeks after the incident, during the cleanup process, as these construction people were digging into the ground to pull up different pieces of debris, molten steel would come up with them. It looked as though it was a miniature volcano, one of the reporters said. Literally molten steel 8 weeks later, going on underground. There is no way that anybody will ever convince me that jet fuel was responsible for that. And then, of course, we have the horrific damage that was done to those who put their lives on the line, were there for hours and days and weeks, and became sick. And our government, in its infinite wisdom, turned its back on them. Let them rot, was the message that they got. And it took a lot of fighting. It took a lot of perseverance. But they finally reached an agreement where they would be taken care of. And even to this day, they have to pursue the government to be sure that they will live up to their word. As we remember 9/11, remember this. You were lied to. There are no ifs. There are no buts. There are no ands. We all were lied to. We deserve to know what the truth is. Everything that we're going through is because of 9/11.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show on the LNM Network. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Do you need toner for your Epson, Hewlett-Packard, Canon, Brother, Apple, or Sharp printers? Look no further than Laser Technologies. In business for over 20 years, they offer the lowest prices on toner on the web. They can also repair your laser printers and toners fast and easy. Call their expert staff today at 561-792-9600 or email us at service@laser-technologies.com for all your toner needs. All toner is shipped nationwide. Why wait? Get the lowest prices on toner. Call or email us today.
Grace has some pretty stellar arms, like Serena Williams good, but her face is pretty disgusting.
Someone please tell him to go back into his closet and leave us alone.
Britney's face is so stupid and I hate her so much. It's like a scientist created her in a lab to annoy humanity and didn't even do that good of a job.
Megan reminds me of a troll doll that came to life intent on killing us with her stupidity.
Why is Grace's head so big? It definitely has nothing to do with how smart she is and probably everything to do with how bloated she is.
He's so funny. Just kidding. Who would find this disfigured flamingo funny?
Never post a selfie of yourself. You look so ugly.
The only reason you have so many views is because we think you're a freak and we can't look away.
Megan is the main reason that the world sucks so much.
I would rather get cancer than listen to another Trevor Moran song.
You are a mistake. You should have never been born.
Drown yourself in a shallow puddle, please.
Wow, I hope she's sterile.
These really stopped being funny a long time ago.
You're so much more than the things that people say about you.
Those people have no right to say cruel things to you to make themselves feel better.
It's okay that you sound different than everyone else.
That's what makes you so special.
We will not tolerate it. We will not tolerate it.
We will not tolerate it.
We will not tolerate it.
Every day, people make me feel like I stand out simply because of the way that I look.
Every day, people make me feel small.
Every day, I face the cruel words of bullying.
And every day, people tell me that I'm brave for enduring this humiliation.
But we're not the brave ones.
It's the ones that say no to the bullying.
The witnesses.
If we all join together, there's nothing that we can't do.
We will no longer be the silent majority.
When we see bullying online,
We will let the world know that we're going to take action with the eye.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
Our actions will overpower cruel words.
I am a witness.
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 There is power in words.
But it's nothing compared to the power of the actions that we put behind our words.
Visit eyewitnessbullying.org to learn more.
I am a witness, and so are you.
I'm gonna stand by you.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
We have ignition. Strap in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Miss Scala, every Saturday night on the LNM Network from 9 p.m. to midnight. And now your host, Miss Scala.
All right, we are back. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. Again, an honor and a privilege. I really mean that. To be able to share with you some of the information that I have. I think it's vital, especially when we talk about 9/11. Everything that we are going through, everything that we are going through today, the militarization of our police, homeland security, all of the different freedoms that have been taken from us, all based upon the Patriot Act, the NDAA, all based upon September the 11th, 2001. And if September the 11th, 2001 was pre-planned, we have a big problem. And if you don't think that there are people within our government that would do such a horrendous thing, the evidence stands before you. We have a president that they were willing to assassinate. His life has been put on the line multiple times. The same people who killed John F. Kennedy, who killed Robert Kennedy, who killed Martin Luther King, and all of the others that try to bring this to light, the same people and their followers are responsible for 9/11. It's not just one country. There's this was a multitude of different things coming together. And if you think that we're the only country with criminals, you've got a shocking truth coming that's going to slap you in the face. As dirty and nasty as we are, where do you think we learned it from? Take a look at Israel. I know I'm going to get crap about that, I'm sure. I'm not an anti-Semite. I have personal friends whom I love dearly who are Jewish. It's not about Jewish people. Just like when you see our government here is corrupt and disgustingly sick and twisted, it's not a reflection of the people. Well, it is kind of in a way, a reflection of the people themselves. It's not us that are doing it. It's the government that's doing it. It's the same thing that's going on in Israel. Their government is sick, twisted, corrupt, and make our people look like they're walking a park. Saudi Arabia was also involved. The UK was also involved. This was a collaboration of this is why it's so dangerous to talk about this. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it must be discussed. All right, let me, I get really upset about 9/11. Well, I get upset about a lot of things, and 9/11 is one of them. It's just everything that we're going through, my friends, everything that we are going through is because of 9/11. And if 9/11 was a lie, what does that mean? All right, with me tonight, again, this is like, I can't believe it. What a nice, pleasant surprise to be able to find none other than David Gallagher, the real, you feeling lucky punk kind of guy. Hey, David, how are you?
I'm great, Ursad. It's good to talk to you tonight.
Hey, so you and I had a conversation about a week ago about some of the things that are going on in this country. And I wanted to kind of refresh that. But before we get into that, we're going to have, is John still expected to be on tonight?
Oh, sure.
Okay,
yep,
great.
He'll be here.
So
God willing.
John likes to talk about the 14th Amendment, right?
That's correct, yes.
So we'll be talking, we're having a little bit of a discussion about the 14th Amendment, what it is, what it does, the intention of it, why it's important. Of course, every one of them is important, but some stand out more than others, like the Second Amendment.
Yep.
But it is vital.
We'll be touching on that tonight, too, I'm sure.
It is a vital part of our freedoms. It is something that has been bitten away at, if you will, a little bite here and a little bite there. And now we find ourselves years later, almost 2 decades after 9/11, and they're no longer little bites. Now they're huge chomps. Now they're talking openly about taking our ability away from us to defend ourselves.
When you have a U.S. Senator on the Republican side of the fence talking about it, such as Lindsey Graham, you have real problems.
Real problems. And this idea of these red flag laws, these are absolutely unconstitutional. What happened to due process? What happened to the idea that I'm innocent until I am proven guilty? With the red flag laws, you are guilty until you can prove yourself innocent. I can't.
Now, you're aware that that law was tested in Florida, right? The Stoneman-Douglas Security Act of 2018 put many of the provisions of that law into the Florida law. We even have now that every student in every school in the state of Florida has an app in their possession that allows them, it's called the, I can't think of the first part of it. Anyway, the app allows them to report any individual that they are afraid is going to be a threat to them anonymously to the school district and law enforcement. Fortify FL, and it was disseminated in February of this year to every student in every school district in the state.
Okay, so for anybody listening that's not familiar with what we're talking about, there was a shooting here in Florida at a school. There's a lot of questions about what happened. We have a school teacher who described the shooter as somebody that was all dressed up in like war gear almost. However, when they found the quote shooter, he was passed out on the grass. Where is this war gear? Where is all the equipment that this teacher described that she saw? We have a student who says, Well, it couldn't have been him doing all of the shooting, because while I was talking to him, there was shooting going on. So there's many different questions that happened during this whole thing. Many of them surround the idea that many people, the FBI knew. Well, let me take that back. The school board knew. The sheriff knew. I'm not sure about the FBI knew. I think they did, but I'm not positive. But I know the sheriff did, and I knew the school board both knew that this young man had exhibited dangerous tendencies, dangerous actions, that he could be seriously dangerous to the public, to his fellow students. And they didn't do anything about it. They didn't even so much as do a thorough follow-up with the young man. Now, in my pessimistic view, and what I've learned about our government, it would not surprise me if they did this on purpose, just so they could do exactly what you just said, Dave, about this app.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me go further. That event happened on Valentine's Day, I believe.
Correct.
The act was completely, there was two parts of it, and I've studied how this act went through the Florida legislature. It went through the standard procedures. This particular set of legislation went through the standard procedures of going through committees, where wording was changed here and there and so on, until about, I think it was around the 6th or so of April, and I might be off by a couple of days. It was passed on the 9th of April. 3 or 4 days before that, thousands of lines of language was put into the bill after the first reading on the Senate floor. It's where it didn't have the opportunity to be vetted by committee. And that is the language that is the most ominous, draconian, dangerous in the bill. Wow. And it was shoved through. I have a very good friend who's a very prominent attorney. He's won 3 cases before the Supreme Court, Dr. Edwin Vieira, and I was talking to him about this one time, and I said, they had this all ready to go. He said, of course they had it ready to go. And so and Scala, this goes back to what you were talking about in that first half hour, which is really germane to what our whole conversation tonight is about. And that is, we don't have the ability to know what is going on. The average citizen is completely in the dark, has no capability to get answers to the questions that they are asking all over the place, except to go to the media. I call this perpetrated ignorance. And by the way, it's not just the media. It's the civil government. It's the educational system from K through postgraduate. It's religious and civic institutions. It's corporate interests, and it's professional organizations that are all miseducating and giving us false information, not just simply by design or being fed, but because we don't have the access to the information. And this goes back, if you remember, we first met when I called in. I'd met Angel and through just a set of events. She told me about being a guest on your show, on actually Michael's show on Friday night 2 weeks ago. And I called in then, and then you and I continued the conversation the next night. And I brought up this concept called subsidiarity, which I learned from Dr. Vieira, by the way. And the concept is that every problem is a local problem. There's not one problem that anybody has anywhere in the world that is not a local problem. Duh, right? Every problem's local. The question is, how do you deal with that problem? And in order to deal with it effectively, you have to have 3 things. And this is why, as you said, the key is locality. We've got to deal with things at the grassroots local level, because you have to have 3 things in order to be able to solve a problem at its source. You have to have a mechanism, you have to have the authority, and most importantly, you must have access to all of the necessary information to solve the problem. And subsidiarity is kind of like subsidiary like commune is like communism. They're kind of the same, but they're not actually the same. A subsidiary is a entity that has a authority that you can go to when you need further resources. Okay. Subsidiarity means you don't have to go to those other resources, meaning the county or the state or the general government, unless you can't solve it. Then you can ask their permission. It's not like they have the right to come in. But we've got this whole thing flipped on its head, and John will talk about this whole issue in detail. But the point of this is, even trying to address the issues of how the Brodmann-Stoneman bill came into place and what happened in that shooting and who was involved. We don't have the mechanism, the authority, or access to information to know. And that was something we used to have in this country very seriously. My background is I've spent about a decade studying how the founding generation beat the British. Because you know who Jorge Santa Anna is. He's, you know what he said, because I've shared it with you.
Mm-hmm.
I shared it the other night. He who cannot remember the past is condemned to repeat it. But he left a word out. Okay, they who cannot remember the bad past are condemned to repeat it. In the paragraph that where that famous phrase came from, in the context, that's obvious, so he didn't have to use the word bad. But we need to use the word bad in that sentence, because there's a corollary. They who can remember the good past are blessed to repeat it, but they who cannot remember the good past get what's coming to them. You know who that's a quote by?
Mm-mm.
Me.
I didn't know.
I got to coin something, right?
Amen.
The point is, this is, to me, a key principle. In the Declaration of Independence, it talks about the laws of nature and nature's God. They don't change, either set. Laws of nature is those who don't necessarily accept the divine influence. Laws of nature, God, are those who do. We have a beautiful suggestion there. It doesn't matter which side of the coin you're on. There are laws in this universe that operate no matter what we want to do about it. And, so these principles we're talking about are they're just going to be there. They're just going to continue. And what, you and I talked about the other day when we had lunch, or dinner, I guess was that we have got to begin to look at not just becoming aware of what's going on, but we have to also go back a step and we have to determine what is relevant that we need to become aware about, which is really where I believe we've got to start. Because there's a lot of information. I mean, we now live in the information age where we get, Moore's Law says that information doubles every 18 months.
Hmm.
And that's been, we are on complete overload of information. It's off the charts. And what's coming with Internet of Things and artificial intelligence and what's the third of those, of that trilogy? Blockchain. That's going to become a $37 trillion industry over the next decade.
Wow.
The World Wide Web, e-commerce, and there was another one, a third component of that, was only $13 trillion.
Wow.
We're talking almost 3 times the amount of money over the next decade is going to be put into a set of technocracy with a little t, which is just simply the ability for people to figure out how to make technology work to our benefit. But the threat is the capital T technocracy. Patrick Wood has written some tremendous material on this, if you've ever heard of him. And the point is, technocracy with a capital T has the ability to make Nazi Germany look like tiddlywinks.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
It's not just scary, it's completely petrifying.
Wow.
And so, what happened was about a decade ago, I read some of yours material and I just went, somebody's got to look into this, because he's such a highly technical legal writer. His stuff's almost impossible to read by the average layman. but the importance of what he's been putting out there, 3,000 pages on the Second Amendment, by the way, okay, is so important that we've got to have people that are educators. And I have a Master of Science in Education from Florida State, and I homeschooled 5 kids through high school and used to speak at homeschooling conferences across the country on how to teach your kids through high school. So I am an educator, right? And the whole point here, we've got to get this stuff brought down to the level that an eighth grade reader, which is the average reading level of the average American in our country today,
That's sad.
can get it.
Yeah.
But it's sad, but that's where we got to go.
Yeah, that's
It's
the
not really
reality. Yeah.
Totally sad. I mean, there were guys back in the revolutionary days that couldn't read a word. So, in fact, my ancestor probably couldn't. They came over here from Ireland. It was a soldier at Valley Forge.
Wow.
So, yeah, I'm pretty blessed to have learned that. Anyway, so the bottom line of all this is, how do we get the proper concepts of relevance in our day? That, to me, is, and by the way, I've got to say this as we talk. I'm just me. I say that all the time. I'm not any special person. None of us are, really. We all have blood flowing through our veins. We all use a commode the same way.
That's right.
We all put our pants on the same way.
That's right.
And I'm just a normal human being like everyone else, listening to what's out there. I have certain gifts and talents that God has given me that if I don't use them, I am derelict in my duty and my obligation to my Creator. And I'm just sharing things that I have been thinking about for a decade or more. I do consider myself somewhat of a social engineer, in that I want to help our fellow Americans who really do care about this country to learn how they can restore freedom and justice economically, socially, politically, educationally, spiritually, and morally. And all we're trying to do is assist in getting the good people the ability to govern themselves, because we are smart enough, competent enough, and strong enough to govern ourselves.
Amen.
But we have to be willing to do what's necessary to do it.
You have to. You also have to understand one of the things that you brought up about being able to get through this. You mentioned 3 things: mechanism, authority, and information. What I believe, I don't know if you put those in any particular order, but the most important to me.
They're not. They're all. They're 3 legs of a stool.
But
or 3 corners of a triangle, or 3 sides of a triangle.
The way that I see
you can't
this,
have it without all 3.
The way I see it, though, that authority would be the most prevalent, the most vital of the 3, because without authority, we can't do anything. Would that be correct?
What if you don't have the mechanism, but you have the authority?
What if
you don't have the information, but you've got the authority and the mechanism?
Good point.
You see, all 3 are vital.
That's an excellent point. Yeah.
We have to have all 3.
No, I agree. I just thought, I was thinking
now the one that is the teeth is the authority.
Maybe that's
right?
that's a better way to describe it. Yeah.
The way I say it is that most people wouldn't be afraid of a wolf, a lion, or a bear if they didn't have claws and teeth.
Correct.
And
the authority would
Americans in this country have no claws and teeth.
Well, we've been declawed. We've been detoothed.
Well, I'll even say it's worse than that. We've been emasculated. We've been neutered. We've been castrated politically.
All for the sake of tolerance, or so we're told anyway, to be tolerant.
Well, even deeper than that, all for the sake of the continuing story. When John comes on, he'll take us back to the Civil War. I go all the way back to right after the ink dried on the Revolution. There was a group called the Regulators back then. We won't go into detail about them tonight, but you've heard of Shays Rebellion and Fry's Rebellion and the Whiskey Rebellion, right?
I've heard of it. I'm not familiar, but I've heard them mentioned.
Do you know what the point of those 3 rebellions, quote unquote rebellions? That's the historical term that was put in place by the winners. Okay, for instance, Ethan Allen was a regulator, but he succeeded because he happened to do his. He was up there in Vermont and he rebelled against the New York legislature and government because of land issues, but because of the times when he rebelled and the men with him rebelled, and they went and fought in Ticonderoga, they were considered heroes. Okay. But you know what they were fighting for? They were fighting for the right of the people, for the will of the people. When they did it in the rebellions of 1792 and 93 and 4 against the federal government and the Massachusetts and the Pennsylvania governments, they were called insurrectionists and rebels. It all has to do with the context of history. And when we begin to learn the actual source documents, and you go and read the actual information in letters and particular political documents of the day, it's stuff we are not taught. We don't have the information. I believe that the greatest blessing of the last 30 years is the internet, because it has given us access to so much information that they haven't been able, those who want to, squash us, that want to bring the people down to the place of complete sheeple, haven't been able to do so because we know too much. And as long as we can keep that access and we can keep the weapon in the hands of the people, which, as you can tell, they're trying to get it out of our hands as quickly as possible.
Openly, brazenly, openly saying.
Which, by the way, is treason.
Yes.
You're aware of that, right? Yeah. You know why? Because the definition of treason is that it's levying war against the states or giving aid and comfort to our enemies. And if you attempt to even try to disarm way before there's an armed conflict, the people, by taking away their arms, that is an act of treason. I mean, I try not to go all over the map, but these things are, I think, important little elements of the conversation that,
I don't think people recognize it.
I appreciate you inviting me to come and talk about it.
All right, listen, I we had that conversation, over while I ate, and it was very interesting, and I thought it was, vital to have you come on, and we carry on some of that conversation for some of the listeners to kind of share in on it, because there is a lot of stuff that you and I know about. A lot of people don't. It's not that we're smarter than anybody else. It's just that we've been what's the word I'm looking at? Exposed, I guess, is the word.
We exposed ourselves to the information.
Yeah.
We went and looked for it. We dug down. I'm a researcher and a scientist, and we've just dug into the facts. We've looked at the data, and 10 years ago, when I began to talk about this stuff with people, the old saying of the tinfoil hat, right? They looked at me like I had a tinfoil hat on my head.
Yep.
They're not doing that to us anymore. People are going, yeah, I agree, because they've been affected. They've been harmed. The mortgage bubble did it to a lot of people. They saw the corruption in the courts. They lost their homes, and they're sitting there shaking their heads going, what just happened to me?
Yeah. Yeah.
John Whitehead, the great friend of mine and the champion for freedom, that's the founder and CEO and director of the Rutherford Institute. I don't know if you know his name at all.
I know the Rutherford
He's written
Institute.
a book called, he's written a book called Battlefield America, The War on the American People. There's 12,000 examples in that book of the long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object to reduce us under an absolute despotism.
Wow.
As the Declaration of Independence says.
Amazing. All right, we're going to take a break, and hopefully while we're on break, we'll get John to call in, and when we come back, we'll have John Ainsworth with us. So don't go away. You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show. Tonight I have David Callihan, the real Callihan, with me tonight, and we'll have John Ainsworth here in just a few moments. So here we go.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show on the LNM Network. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Being a dad is an adventure full of special moments.
A cruise!
Surprise! Unexpected moments.
I got this.
And even awkward moments.
Okay, Dad, thank you.
But every moment you spend with your kids Even the smallest moments can make the biggest impact on your child's life. So take a moment to be a dad today.
There's a lot of fear in coming back to school. I wasn't sure if I could do it. I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but the teachers, the counselors, they help you. One of the teachers was Miss Araceli. Miss Araceli, she gave me direction. Every single time I had a question, she'll put down whatever she's doing and she'll come over and she'll sit there with you until you get it. Thank you, Miss Araceli. I know you make a difference in people's lives because of the person and teacher you are. I wanted to be here because I wanted to thank you for helping me get a beautiful gift. 50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work. Getting your high school diploma, it is a life-changing experience. It really is.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Have you ever heard of Audible? Audible is a website with hundreds of thousands of audiobooks. They're all high quality, easy to listen to, and, best of all, if you take advantage of a special deal that we've worked out for you, you can get one for free. That's right, a free audiobook of your choice in any genre, simply by going to audibletrial.com/openeyes and signing up for the free trial. It's simple to do, and it would support the shows that we bring to you, and hey, you get a free book out of the whole thing. So why not take advantage of it today? Go to audibletrial.com/openeyes and sign up for the trial.
Ask 10 different scientists about the environment, population control, genetics, and you'll get 10 different answers. But there's one thing every scientist on the planet agrees on. Whether it happens in 100 years, or 1,000 years, or 1,000,000 years, eventually our sun will grow cold and go out. When that happens, it won't just take us. It'll take Marilyn Monroe, and Lao Tzu, and Einstein, and Morobuto, and Buddy Holly, and Aristophanes. All of this was for nothing. Unless we go to the stars.
Do you need toner for your Epson, Hewlett-Packard, Canon, Brother, Apple, or Sharp printers? Look no further than Laser Technologies. In business for over 20 years, they offer the lowest prices on toner on the web. They can also repair your laser printers and toners fast and easy. Call their expert staff today at 561-792-9600 or email us at service@laser-technologies.com for all your toner needs. All toner is shipped nationwide. Why wait? Get the lowest prices on toner. Call or email us today.
While other stations just talk a good game, we win it.
There are facts we're not being told on TV, so I want to talk to you about gun control in America. Why did all of the big media focus their attention on the attacks in Orlando and completely ignore the fact that the following weekend 52 people were shot in Chicago, a city with some of the strictest gun control laws in the country? There seems to be an agenda for gun control while ignoring the gun violence in other cities and countries where the experiment of gun control is already underway and failing. I carry a gun because there are only two types of creatures on this planet, predators and prey. No one watches a cheetah chase down a gazelle and deny that the gazelle has the right to use its horns to protect itself. But there are people who would deny that same right of self-defense to other human beings. Such people seem to think that the way to stop the cheetah is to cut the horns off the gazelle. That somehow, if you make it easier for the predator will simply go away. It doesn't work that way. If you make it easier for the predator, you get more predators. I carry a gun because when predators know they're less likely to have an advantage, they're less likely to be a predator. The FBI found that when states allow concealed carry, murder rates are immediately reduced. And cities in America that pass a law requiring households to have a firearm see the number of home invasions drop dramatically. I carry a gun because the ratio a gun is used in a homicide is significantly less than when it's used in self-defense. Firearms are used up to 300 times more often to save innocent lives than to commit a murder, and guns prevent up to 2.5 million crimes in the U.S. every year, often without a single shot ever being fired. I carry a gun not because it's a weapon, but because it's a shield. 200,000 women every year use a gun to defend themselves against sexual abuse. I carry a gun because almost every mass shooting in the last 50 years took place in a gun-free zone. Law-abiding citizens are forced to give up their right to protect themselves, while every criminal breaks the law, including gun-free signs, when they decide to murder. I carry a gun because a gun-free zone makes it easier for predators to target their prey. Stricter gun laws make the problem worse, and making guns illegal wouldn't remove murder from our cities any more than making heroin illegal stop addicts from doing drugs. I carry a gun because the facts are nations with strict gun control laws have significantly higher murder rates than those that don't. I carry a gun because I know in the US, scissors and knives kill almost 5 times more people every year than rifles do, including the AR-15 and other so-called assault rifles. Calling to ban a tool will not resolve the problem. I carry a gun because criminals break the law with or without them. The 9/11 terrorists used box cutters in airplanes. Timothy McVeigh used bags of assault fertilizer. I understand that some people want to blame things like semi-automatic rifles, 30-round magazines, hate crimes, terror threats, gun control, historic flags, national security, religion, or illegal immigration. I understand we want to blame something, anything that we can control. But don't blame me because I carry a concealed gun to protect my family. I understand we need to start addressing what we really want to ban: violence, murder, and insanity. I carry a gun because I know who's pushing to ban them. Our right to bear arms is not there simply to protect us against lowly criminals. I know the politicians know this, which is why they call for gun control instead of crime control. I carry a gun because I've seen gamblers who want more winnings, alcoholics who want more alcohol, and people with power want more power. I understand what the Founding Fathers knew, that the right to bear arms is there to protect the American people from those drunk with power, and I understand every country was free before it wasn't. I carry a gun because having the right to bear arms gives the citizens of this great nation a fighting chance against the predators of greed and power, whether in our home, our capital, or our neighboring lands. Evil exists only because too many good people stand by and do nothing. I know seeing America's right to free speech was a chilling wake-up call when it became locked away in a zone. That's why so many steadfast Americans and great organizations stand up for the people to keep the balance of power from tipping over. I carry a gun because it removes the unfair advantage between predators and prey. I don't carry because I'm looking for a fight. I carry a gun because I'm looking to be left alone. People can only persuade you to do something by one of two ways: reason or force. Having a gun with me removes their option to make me do something by force. It helps keep predators civilized. That's why the right to bear arms is important. That's why I own a firearm, and that's why I'm proud to say I carry a gun.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Goes, 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 goes.
Now, from sunny South Florida, it's the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscala. Every Saturday night from 9 p.m. to midnight on the L&M Network. And now, your host, Riscala.
All right, my friends, we are back. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. Tonight, I have David Gallagher with me. Excuse me, somebody knocked me out. David Callihan with me. That's what I get for trying to read and talk at the same time. And we'll have John Ainsworth on with us in just a moment. Wanted to say thank you to L&M Network for allowing us the platform to be able to bring this information to everyone. And I want to thank the subscribers and those of you who have donated to this network. Thank you, because without you, we would not be here. And we are, again, we're asking those of you who have the capacity, please give us a donation. Please help support our network. You find information here that is not readily found in other places. And, for us, I've said many times, it's not about the money, but unfortunately it is about the money. And what I ask of any of you is nothing that I wouldn't do myself. If I'm asking you to subscribe, please know that I myself am a subscriber. I've been a subscriber from the beginning because I believe in what we're doing. I believe that we're passing on information that is vital to making our society a better place. Going back to the way that this country really should be, we have been bamboozled for the longest time, and it's sad to think that some people think this is normal. This is not normal. What we're experiencing today is not anywhere near normal. What we're experiencing today is outright tyranny, and unfortunately many people are asleep to that, and we've got to do the best that we can to wake them up. So a donation, a subscription, tell your friends about L&M Network. It is greatly appreciated. Okay, David, we are back, and I believe we have John on the line with us as well. So let me say welcome back, Dave.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, I'm going to say a couple of things before John talks, just
Sure.
to kind of set a stage, if you don't mind. John has just literally gotten off of a conference call, apparently, that he had in Virginia with people in Virginia that are seriously looking at the things that he's suggesting. And so we're getting a guy who's not just sharing theory here, but he's a man who even 20 years ago puts things into practice in his own home state of North Carolina. I know he's working with people in Texas that are beginning to pursue this. So what we're getting tonight is not just theory or nice ideas, but things that actually have practical positive benefit. And I say that because I've been studying the stuff I've been studying for a decade. We've attempted to do a few things to put some things in place, and it's very difficult to come up with something that actually has teeth to it and actually has the ability to move the change down the field, is a phrase I like to use. And so I wanted people to hear that from me. Also, practically speaking, I've become a donor to the network myself. Not a lot, but people that are listening to the show, I want to encourage them as a listener, a brand new listener, only in the last couple of weeks, make a donation to keep something like this on the air. I think that's critical. And the other thing I want to say is, what we're doing tonight is a conversation that has got to begin to happen in this country. We've got to get people to start talking about this next to the cooler, water cooler, as the saying goes. We need to have people begin to educate themselves and understand that if we don't fix this, we're toast. And it's got to be the good people of this country that make this happen. And so, I've only known John for a few weeks myself. I've been studying his material on his website, americasremedy.com, and I want to toot his horn, not him toot his own. People need to go to americasremedy.com and go to the videos and watch them and get just an amazing amount of very well done scholarship that at least forces you to have to consider what John's going to be sharing with us. So that's the thoughts I wanted to share as we introduce this good man.
Well, thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Welcome, John.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
And it's truly an honor and privilege to have you on. And I understand you've been at this for just a couple of days, so you're quite experienced in what you're about to present to us. And if I'm not mistaken, this is going to revolve around the 14th Amendment?
Kind of. We actually don't argue the validity of the 14th Amendment, even though it is invalid. We argue the constitutionality of the Reconstruction Acts, which coerced the passage of the 14th Amendment. And let me give you a nuanced reason why I said that. Is the validity of the 14th, there's two ways to look at the validity of the 14th Amendment. One is the ratification process with the states, which was patently illegal, and there's a lot of information on that. But the courts have ruled you can't bring that up in court. It's a political question, and Congress gets to decide whether the process of ratification with the states is legitimate or not. It's a political question, and that you can't question the validity of the 14th Amendment. But you can question an act that coerced its passage, which was the Reconstruction Act. This is an act that said that basically annulled the original states. I don't know how much you've gone over in the show.
We haven't gone over much.
Oh, okay. But yeah, what the Reconstruction Act did was they were designed to pass the 14th Amendment, and they annulled 10 states of the American Union and said that you can only come back into the Union if you will get a group of people that are into this scheme of ratifying the 14th Amendment. In other words, and people need to go read the first Reconstruction Act, and you'll actually read it in there. There's an act of Congress that annuls states, coerces who's allowed to vote in those states, forces them to create new states, and then once they are admitted as a new state, they are required to ratify the 14th Amendment. And so we look at that process as being illegal, criminal, unconstitutional, and that's where our remedy lies. So fundamentally, that's it in kind of a nutshell.
But, in all fairness, John, I agree with you 100%. Here is my concern over this. There are things happening today that are unconstitutional, that are illegal, that are openly illegal, and yet they are still continuing to happen in our face. They're in our face, literally in our face, kind of illegal. How are we going to put a stop to that? How do we deal with that?
Well, I'm going to mention something that may be a little hard to wrap your mind around. One is, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but there's very little they're actually doing that's unconstitutional. And let me kind of explain that. Is what the 14th Amendment did was nationalize citizenship. In other words, the status called a United States citizen was created by the United States Congress. There never was that status before 1866.
What were we? What were we before that?
State citizens. You were North Carolinians and South Carolinians and Texans
I see.
Californians and New Yorkers. A U.S. citizenship status is a nationalized citizenship created by Congress. And when you take on that status, it basically says that Congress can pass exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over you. And there's actually, you can go to the Federalist Papers, Federalist 39, Madison pretty much said it just like that. And so, so you have to look at what the purpose of the 14th Amendment was, and that was to nationalize citizenship, basically annul state citizenship, and make everyone subject to Congress. Well, what appears, which is fundamentally an overturning of what our founders put into place with the Constitution. The Constitution of the United States was created by the states for the protection of the states. They're the beneficiary of that Constitution. The federal government was created to protect them and protect their rights. Well, the 14th Amendment nationalized citizenship, got rid of any individual status of states or state citizenship, and made everyone a state citizen. And I think one of the best ways to look at it to where you can understand it, you've got this concept of having state rights, the 9th and 10th Amendments. Anything, not in the Constitution is reserved to the states. Well, let's look at just abortion. Okay. Before the 14th Amendment, any state that wanted to have abortion, if the people so chose, they could pass it, but another state wouldn't have to. Because it would be all the New Yorkers would say, hey, we want abortion, and all the North Carolinians would say we don't. And you could have the exercise of a state right, and that's how it would be in your state. But once you made everyone in New York and everyone in North Carolina and everyone in Texas and everyone in Florida a United States citizen, well, if a United States citizen, if the courts rule they have a right to an abortion, then all United States citizens have that right. And that's why these become, and this is through the Civil Rights Act, which I say the Civil Rights Act, which is what the 14th Amendment put through, is really properly termed a National Rights Act. In other words, your rights originally came from God. Now your rights come from Congress. And if you look at these acts, again, the gay marriage thing and all these things, I look at North Carolina. North Carolina ratified an amendment ratified the Constitution with an amendment that said that marriage was between a man and a woman. Well, once, New York and California and all Massachusetts all said, well, U.S. citizens have a right to be married man to man, woman to woman. Well, because they're United States citizens and North Carolina is composed of United States citizens, that right goes to everyone. And so the amendment that the North Carolinians passed became unconstitutional and could not be maintained. So we start seeing this concept of where state rights, where huge things that states want to do, they cannot do anymore. And all this is based upon Reconstruction, the 14th Amendment, and things of this nature.
So if I understand what you're saying, if we can strike down the 14th Amendment or find that it was, I'm trying to find the right terminology, we can determine that it was done inappropriately and against our Constitution, that therefore we can do it against the other ones that have been. Is that what you're leading up to?
Well, what it is 14th Amendment, again, it's not really as much the 14th Amendment as it is the Reconstruction Act. The 14th Amendment forced on this country this status called a United States citizenship status. Okay. And what that did was make it to where Congress had control over everyone.
Yeah, I got that part of it. I understand, but I'm trying to figure out.
Congress. Go ahead.
I'm trying to figure out how are we. I guess the easiest way to describe it is the first Reconstruction Act is the root of what we're trying to do here. Is that because of that? Is because that happened? Is because the 14th Amendment was passed through and it was passed through unconstitutionally because of the Reconstruction Act?
Yes, the 14th Amendment is the hinge point. The Reconstruction Act is what coerced the 14th Amendment into ratification. You have to remember, it actually takes a little bit of time to go through this. Let me give you just go through a little history. If you look at the object of the American Civil War, Congress actually passed an object and said the war was not for any purpose of conquest or subjugation. And they passed that in 1861, and the war was patently illegal. I mean, how do you wage war on a free people? And if you conquer them, you get to make them free again. I mean, it just defies all logic. You've got the concept of secession. All secession is the formal leaving of an association. Well, the Declaration of Independence was a secession document. That was our document saying we are formally leaving you. Now, we had to fight a war for that one, but it set a principle that we have that right, that people have a right to alter their form of government if it becomes destructive of the people. We also seceded from the Articles of Confederation. When we went from the Articles of Confederation to the Constitution, we seceded, and you can read that in the Constitution itself. I think it's Article 7, where it says that once 9 states adopt this form of government, being the United States Constitution, it becomes binding on those 9. So a lot of people think we went from the Articles of Confederation to the Constitution as okay, we're just changing our form of government. We had the Articles one day, now we all 13 have the Constitution the next day. Well, that's not true. Every state had to voluntarily leave the Articles of Confederation and voluntarily join a union under the Constitution. And evidence of that is when the Constitution was inaugurated and George Washington was inaugurated as the first president, there were only 11 states in the Union. All 13 did not go. North Carolina and Rhode Island were the 2 states that were out of the Union at that point in time. So again, it just shows that it was a voluntary leaving, and since North Carolina and Rhode Island had not chosen to enter it, it was not binding on them. Well, then you go to 1860 when the deep southern states are seceding, and Abraham Lincoln says, well, I'm going to say that that's a crime. Well, it's nice to say something's a crime if you don't like it, but you got to be able to point to the statute or the principle that says they're not allowed to do it. And his principle was that the southern states had to have permission to leave the Union from all the other states. And that's not free will. That is not a state having the right to alter or change. if you have to get permission from someone. Abraham, and again, we can go in depth of that. Just trust me on that, and I can prove a whole lot more on that if we want to go down that rabbit hole. So the war was illegal. When the war was over in 1865, Abraham Lincoln had waged the war on the principle that the southern states had never left the Union. They were merely states in rebellion to lawful authority, and he declared their ordinances of secession null and void. So that's why they called them the rebel states. They were in rebellion to lawful authority. They were still in the Union. So when the war was over in 1865, Congress had proposed the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery. Well, all of the former southern states that were in the Confederate States of America, I think, well, not all of them, most of them, ratified the 13th Amendment in December of 1865. So they were participating member states in the American Union in December of 1865. Okay? So they're in the Union. Peace is declared by presidential proclamation in 1866, and now peace is declared. Well, in 1867, Congress proposed the 14th Amendment that's going to nationalize citizenship. And the southern states didn't go for it, and with the exception of Tennessee. So that's when Congress passed the Reconstruction Act and said, okay, we're going to annul the 10 southern states that did not ratify the 14th Amendment, and we're going to make it a prerequisite that they ratify it before they can enter the Union as a state again. Okay, so that's what the 14th Amendment did. Now, if anybody can show me where Congress is given that authority of if they have an amendment they want to have ratified, that they have the authority to annul states and put a prerequisite on them that they have to ratify an amendment before they're allowed to enter the Union, well, that's a coercive act. All votes should be of free will, not coerced and contingent upon another action. So that's where we go at. So if I can, hang on one second here. I'm trying to pull something up on my computer here.
Hey, John, while you're doing that, there's another component to that too. I might be getting ahead of things, but the very fact that when they coerced, they did it using federal troops in each of those states, with a provision in the amendment that any individual who had been involved in the rebellion didn't have the right to vote.
Right.
That's a tremendous coercion.
Wow.
Under the barrel of a gun.
Yeah.
that really nullifies things pretty quickly if we are able to ever get that into the light of day, it seems. But continue.
Yeah, let me go. I'm just going to read out of Federalist Paper number 39. And so this is the exact wording of James Madison. And let me just talk a little bit about the Federalist Papers. What are they doing here? The Federalist Papers were designed to interpret what this new Constitution is about, because the people were fearful. Are we creating a federal government, in other words, a federal union where all the states maintain their individual sovereignty and state rights, or are we creating a national government, a government of everybody's all the same? And what the Federalist Papers basically lay out is we're actually creating a hybrid, that the states get to keep all their rights not enumerated in the Constitution. The Constitution is a limited one, but we are going to do certain things on a national level. We're going to wage war as a nation. We're going to have one currency as a nation rather than individual banks of the individual states. We're going to treaty with other countries as a nation. In other words, New York's not going to have a treaty with France, and South Carolina would have a different treaty with France. We're going to treaty as a nation. But outside of that, those limited powers, we're really a federation where all the states maintain their sovereignty. Think of the European Union in that concept. Like France and Germany, they get to keep their individual identity in the European Union. Well, that's kind of how we were. But now let me go and read out of Federalist 39 of what Madison said would happen if we had a national government. What kind of authority would the federal government have? So here's the quote. The idea of a national government involves in it not only an authority over the individual citizen, but an indefinite supremacy over all persons and things. And then ... the same paragraph. Among the people consolidated into one nation, this supremacy is completely vested in the national legislature. And then he goes on and says, in this relation, then, the proposed government cannot be deemed a national one, since its jurisdiction extends to certain enumerated objects only. So you see Madison in Federalist 39 saying that if we had a national government, it would give an authority over the individual citizens, not only just an authority over individual citizens, and these are his exact words, but an indefinite supremacy over all persons and things. And this supremacy is completely vested in the national legislature. So you see that if the United States Congress could nationalize citizenship, they would centralize power, they would basically get rid of states' rights, and they would have total control over what the rights of all individuals are, which is what we see being done through the 14th Amendment. You know, we're told that the 14th Amendment was designed to give the blacks, the freed blacks, civil rights. Okay. So, okay, let's go with that. Let's just look at the landmark Supreme Court cases on the 14th Amendment that was supposed to give black civil rights and see how many black civil rights it gave. Okay. Murray versus Trillette, Madeline Murray O'Hare taking prayer out of school, violation of the 14th Amendment. Madeline Murray O'Hare was a white woman, and through the use of the 14th Amendment, they took prayer out of school. Roe versus Wade. Roe was a white woman, and that's the one that did abortion. It violated the rights of a United States citizen. It was a violation of the 14th Amendment. Stone versus Graham, which took away the display of the 10 Commandments on public property, said that it was a violation of the 14th Amendment. Lawrence versus Texas, which said that all the sodomy laws in all the states were invalid, was based off of violations of the 14th Amendment. Lawrence was an elderly white guy. And so we start seeing that this amendment that is pitched to the American people as to be for black civil rights. And of course, most people go, oh yeah, well, we needed that. And I'm not against black civil rights. Well, it's a bait and switch. They're telling us it's for one thing, but when we start seeing the application of it, we see that's not what it was all about. And it's just real easy to go through all these Supreme Court cases and start seeing this is not about black civil rights. Heck, you go to 1898, the Wong Kim Ark case. Wong Kim Ark was born, he was a Chinaman, born to Chinese subject of the Emperor of China, but he was born in the United States. Well, he left the country, went to China, and tried to come back in. And the United States government says, you're not allowed to come back in. He says, well, the 14th Amendment says all persons born in the United States are United States citizens. I was born in the United States. And the government tried to say, well, no, that was for the black man. Well, the Supreme Court says, nope, it's not for the black man. We have to look at the words that are on the page. And it says all persons born or naturalized are United States citizens. And this is where the ruling that if you're born in the United States, you become a citizen, which there's only two countries in the world that have that, and that's the United States and Canada. This concept of which we're seeing this problem on our southern border where, you know, people from other countries are coming over here and then claiming U.S. citizenship status for their children. And then now you can't deport them or their children. The anchor baby concept also comes from the 14th Amendment. So all sorts of maladies that plague us today have their root in the 14th Amendment and the Reconstruction Act and everything that overturned what we originally had. Does that help clear it up? Are there any other questions on that?
What I'm not real clear about is what steps can we take today to begin to what's the word I'm looking for? To return to the way it should be. I mean, people like you tell us, and I don't doubt what you say. I'm in agreement with what you say, but I mean, I've heard other people tell me who are very well educated in our history and our Constitution. But I'm always at a crossroads, and what can we actually do as individual people to reverse what's going on? Since it's been going on for so long, I mean, we're talking back in the 1800s, some of this stuff is going on, and now we're in 2019. how are we going to rectify this? What do we do as an individual?
Excellent question. Okay, well, number one is you got to recognize that an unconstitutional act has no statute of limitations. And this goes back to what David just mentioned a second ago of another part of the Reconstruction Act. What the Reconstruction Act did to coerce the passage of the 14th Amendment is, and I'm going to take North Carolina as the example because I'm from North Carolina, and so this directly affected me, is the original North Carolina Constitution, you had to be a freeman of North Carolina. And that's who that Constitution was designed for. And that's the people who had control of the jurisdiction over the soil of North Carolina all the way up to Reconstruction. Well, when the people of North Carolina refused to adopt the 14th Amendment, what Congress did with the Reconstruction Act, they said, okay, North Carolina, your state is annulled, your Constitution is void, and we're going to say that, and this is what David was talking about a second ago, we're going to say that anyone who participated in the war is not allowed to vote, okay, because of their participation. Well, that's called a bill of attainder, which is forbidden in the U.S. Constitution. And what a bill of attainder is declaring a group of people guilty of a crime without due process of law. People have a right to face their accusers and to answer challenges against them. Well, the U.S. government just said, okay, all you people in North Carolina that participated in the war, you're not allowed to vote. This government is not for you. Now, anyone who wants to vote or anyone who is loyal to the U.S. Congress in this endeavor we're doing, which is to ratify the 14th Amendment, you are allowed to vote. And so this was all the recently freed slaves, and this is what also we call the carpetbaggers, the Northerners that came down and organized everything. And so it became a government not of the people of North Carolina, but of a government of the people that Congress chose. Now, and again, to go on what David was talking about is you got to remember the war was over in 1865 and peace was declared in 1866. The states were not occupied by the United States military. But what the Reconstruction Act did was it annulled the state and said now this reorganization of the state is going to be put into place by the United States military, and they redeployed the military. They basically made the states military districts. They redeployed the military and used the bayonets, and you'll see that phrase used a lot, that these governments were changed at the point of a bayonet. They used soldiers to make sure one group of voters could not vote in this and that one group of voters could vote in this new election. So our position is that the original Constitution of North Carolina, which was, you could say was annulled when, in fact, in law, it wasn't annulled, but in fact, it kind of was. They used the United States military and they depopulated the Constitution of its body politic, and they said, you're not allowed to participate anymore. Well, the Constitution of North Carolina of 1776 was never changed by the consent of the people of North Carolina. So our position is, it's a legal position, is that, well, the reason we don't have lawful government in the United States is because no one is participating in lawful government. No one knows where lawful government went to. They don't realize that constitutions were annulled by the United States Congress. This isn't really taught in public schools, but it's very clear that it did happen. And so what we did in North Carolina was, you know what, I'm going to swear my oath of allegiance to the original North Carolina Constitution rather than this one that's controlled by Congress, and Congress gets to decide what the rights of the people are. I want my rights to come from God again. I want to get underneath a lawful Constitution. And so I have an oath of allegiance to the original North Carolina Constitutions and all laws made pursuant thereof. We vote in it, we pay taxes in it, and we actually sent a declaration of reestablishment to the Bill Clinton, who was president at the time, and to Jim Hunt, who was the governor of North Carolina at the time, saying, hey, we are reestablishing the Constitution of North Carolina of 1776 because we think an unconstitutional act is what displaced it. An unconstitutional act has no force in law. I am not required to recognize an unconstitutional act as valid. And so this is where we're at. So what we ended up doing with this concept is once we did that, I don't have a driver's license. Haven't had a driver's license since actually before we reestablished, and not because it was taken away. It was voluntary. And my legal position is Well, the state of North Carolina created by Reconstruction, and you got to remember that 2 states called North Carolina entered the Union. It wasn't like they just displaced it. That new state that the Reconstruction Acts created, it was admitted into the Union as a new state. So 2 North Carolinas have entered the American Union. It entered as the 39th state of the American Union. And we say that that state that entered the Union, the 39th state of the is not valid, that the original one is valid, and that they are saying, I need to have a driver's license. Well, I don't have one because I don't think they're created valid. They have no authority to tell me, as long as I have a loyalty and can prove that I have a legitimate legal status. You know, I can't just say, oh, you're created illegally, you have no authority over me. I've got to put myself in a proper lawful status. And we're looking at the original constitutions that were put into abeyance, by the United States government through the Reconstruction Acts. I put my loyalty over there. So now when I get pulled over by the police or whatever, and I go into court, I challenge their jurisdiction, which I have a right to do. And I say, I challenge the legitimacy of your state. I do not think it was created lawfully. I think it was put in place unconstitutionally. I have no obligation to it, and I have no obligation to get your license. But if you can prove you're a lawfully created state, I will get your license. And they have never proven it. We have had lots of people. We got a bunch of people doing this. We've got over 20 court cases in North Carolina, and we actually got the constitutionality of the Reconstruction Acts up to the United States Supreme Court in 2012. Again, that's the first time in over 150 years that we, to challenge these things. But, we're destroyed for lack of knowledge. We do not, the average person, virtually every listener of your radio program is not aware of this aspect of our history. And if you're not aware of what a problem is, then you're disabled on how you can cure the problem. And that's where we have so many people in this country saying, oh, we can get remedy over here. Oh, no, they can't do that. We've got the 10th Amendment. They can't violate this. And we see they're constantly doing it. Well, what we say is we've got to get back into a lawful status of state citizens again. Who's the injured party by the Reconstruction Acts? Who did the Reconstruction Acts injure in law? They injured the original body politics, the original states. They said, you're not valid anymore. Okay. So who has a claim? Who's the only body in law that can come and file a claim and say, this act of the United States Congress injured us? Well, it's going to be the state citizens. Well, outside of reestablishing the original states, where are the state citizens? There are none. There's only United States citizens. There are no injured party. There is no remedy in law by staying in that system. The only way to have remedy in law is to say, oh, I'm going to swear my oath of allegiance to the original state. I have a right to swear my oath of allegiance wherever I want. It's up to me to decide what I'm loyal to. And so I swear my oath of allegiance to the original state. And when they say you can't do that, at that point, I can say, I'm a state citizen. You have no authority. Let's take this into a court of law and start fighting it. And that's what we're encouraging lots of people to do. We've got people in Texas, Virginia, North Carolina doing it. And we're looking for more people.
And the website, we mentioned the website earlier. I want to make sure we got it right. It's americasremedy.com. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I'm still absorbing what you're saying. It's a heavy conversation that we're having right now for the average person, because we never talk about, the average person talks about stuff that are really unimportant when you think about it. I mean, like they talk about sports or movies or something of that nature, and we get to talking about something like this, and we're talking about things that have actually occurred while we are where we are today. That's pretty heavy. And so I'm still absorbing what you're telling me, and I love the idea that there are people like you out there willing to educate others, to tell us, give us an idea, open our minds up to the options that we have. What happened? Why did it happen? And how do we undo what's been done? I appreciate it.
Hey, Rascala?
Yep.
Remember that concept we talked about for a few minutes called relevance?
Yep. Yeah.
This is what we're talking about. We've got to get people to start thinking about what's really relevant, what really does impact. There's so many limbs of trees that come off of this root, off of this trunk and root, that we've got to begin to, at least become cognizant about, become aware of, and then we have to figure out where the real issues are that we need to be addressing. This, I see this as one of the most significant, just from the small amount of study I've done over the last few weeks that John has helped me to figure out. It's definitely a serious issue, and people have got to start thinking. We were designed to think and develop our powers of thought. We've got to start using what we were designed to do.
Yeah, but there's been a system in place for the longest time to stop us.
Yes,
from
yes,
thinking.
it has been. Absolutely. In fact, we could even argue that the one of the first things that was done was compulsory education, compulsory attendance laws back from 1851 to 1917 in every one of the states to convert us all over to this brainwashing system that we've all become. We're now generations of children that are now adults, and many have passed away since, that have been miseducated, and it's intentional.
It's sad, and it's infuriating when you learn the truth of what's going on, because it's not an educational system at all. It's an indoctrination into a way of life that's setting you up for your future to be a slave. That's really what it is. All right. Well, I was going to take some calls. How much time have you got left with us there, John?
As of now, I'm open. Okay. I'm only handicapped by the lateness of the hour and my coherence to maintain rationality.
Cool. Well, we're gonna if you're interested in speaking with John, you got a question or comment for the show. Let me open up some of the lines here. You can reach us at area. Go ahead, John.
Go ahead. No, it's David. I was just going to say I have a question that we can start with while you're getting people on the phone.
Okay.
But go ahead and give the number.
All right, it's area code 561-440-5174. That's 561-440-5174. When you call in, just stay muted and we'll get right to you. Go ahead. What was your question, John?
Well, John, the question I've got for you, this is David.
I'm sorry. I thought it was John. Go ahead.
That's okay. I'm very much deeply embedded in the Black community in Tampa. I work very closely with some good people there, and really am trying to understand their concerns and issues and the things that they care about with respect to freedom, with respect to violation of their rights by the police and by the ways that they're treated in their society. There are many that have grievances that they still. It's interesting. We have Holocaust museums. There's never been ever a time in our history where we've really had some official acknowledgement of the pain and suffering that the Black community went through during their hundreds of years of slavery. A totally different issue. But in that conversation, I know one of the things that will be raised by the Black community I'm connected with is the question of, well, yes, the 14th Amendment may have some problems, but one of the things that it has done for us is given us the Civil Rights Act of 1965, where we had the Jim Crow laws, and we had the laws back even prior to that. What do they call those? The Black Codes, where the blacks were not treated as equal citizens even when they were freemen. And one thing that the 14th Amendment has done for us is it's given us a ubiquitous protection by the general government. And the point is that, and I've had this conversation with my good friends in Tampa, so I know that this is a legitimate issue. If you go about eliminating the 14th Amendment, we'll go back to where the states abused their citizens and there was no protection. What's the response to that? How is that going to be dealt with in the greater scheme of things of protecting unalienable rights of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and property of the Black community? If we go back to individual states deciding whether or not they're going to, protect the rights of individuals.
Yeah, that's a huge topic. But let's just start with a couple things. you got to remember that the blacks and whites in the American South got along better pre-Civil War, and shortly thereafter the war.
Hang on. The slaves didn't. I would beg to differ with you. Slavery was not getting along.
Well, but you're trying to use a modern mindset to look at a condition of that time frame. So you got to be really careful.
No, I know the history of the black. Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
Let me finish a couple sentences. Yeah, let me finish a couple sentences here. Is a couple of things that Lincoln did and Seward did was, in fact, the Emancipation Proclamation.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't realize the Emancipation Proclamation did not free any slaves in the Union. It was a war measure. If you go look it up, it's very clear that's exactly what it was. But what was it designed for? What they passed the Emancipation Proclamation for was to try to create a servile uprising. In other words, have all the slaves rise up because basically all the men were off to war. But it didn't happen. There was a tremendous amount of loyalty there. And so then you go to the very end of the war, and you see what the Reconstruction Acts did, and if you go to the Committee of 15, one of the reasons for the passage of the Reconstruction Acts that they actually stated in this committee was that, if the United States government did not grant blacks the right to vote, then the Southern white men would, and their loyalty would be with the Southern whites. In other words, everyone was in anticipation that this would start happening. And there's a lot of quotes about this. This is just another aspect of history that's kind of lost. And the 14th Amendment was designed politically to put the black man against the white man. And we talk about the race relations. This is kind of the footing. Is the United States government actually is the one that created this problem. Then if you go to the Civil Rights Act of 1965, here's one of the problems you're going to find with the 64 Act with Johnson is this is the beginning of the welfare state. You start seeing it also became the destruction of the black family.
Yes.
You can look at any graph and you'll start looking to the 1964 and you'll see these acts that are supposedly designed to help the black man really is designed to destroy their character. And it has actually happened. So we got to be really careful about labeling things that are sold to us as good, but in actuality they destroy. And just because we have this intellectual sympathy towards something, we got to be really careful and look at what it actually and really did, rather than being manipulated by people who want to keep us in servitude to acts that are to keep us in servitude.
I would agree with you.
Again,
I would agree with you. It's really, the conversation is really the point here, that we've got to be able to have a reasonable interchange with those who are asking honest questions, honest whys, to be able to help them understand what is the truth about the manipulation done through the term of art that I use is control frauds. I can define that term if we need to, but the idea that the government sets up something that seems like it's going to benefit, and it actually is being done for the purposes of a weapon against society. And this has happened tens of thousands of times in our history, and we're not even aware of what these things are really intended to do. So I don't disagree with you. I'm asking the question honestly from the point of view of, attempting to help the people that we care about to understand where its real benefit is versus what the perceived benefit is, as you are saying. I would not disagree. It's just important. We've got to be willing to, evaluate these things and flesh them out and have give and take in conversation about what the true intent was of these things, if we're ever going to get to where we can all be on the same page. I don't believe that we are going to ever solve this problem unless we're able to get people that are coming from both persuasions to put aside the parts of their differences that really don't matter to get to the true issue, which is our freedom. And so,
I think you got to be able to look
at
this. You got to be able to look at this whole situation in a little bit more of an unemotional, sterile context. In other words, let's just put some facts on the table.
Yep.
Because this topic you and I are having right now is one of the most uncomfortable topics you could have in this country today.
Yes, it is.
Because it's so hard just to put facts on the table because people are operating off of their prejudices and what they think to be true rather than what the reality and truth of the situation is. Fortunately, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and my hesitancy to talk about it has diminished greatly. It's still an awkward situation, but I'm in total agreement with you. All this stuff has to be put on the table, but the issue is in this current climate we're in, to where if someone misstates the slightest, phrase, all of a sudden they're condemned before they can say another word. We just can't have that. We have to have honest dialogue on this.
Well, if we set the ground rules properly, I think that we can. I believe we really could have an honest dialogue with good people. And I know they exist because I participate and work with them all the time. So
well, great. Well, that's what we're looking for. This whole thing is how to get a freedom back in this country. And also I'd be careful of saying, getting too carried away with, this is a phrase that comes from the national government to try to keep us in the situation of, if the national government doesn't control what people have rights, then the states are just going to start abusing the people again. Well, I look at the abuse the federal government's doing, how many murders they're doing with abortion, what kind of morality they're teaching my children and my grandchildren, and I'm like, oh God, how bad could the states be compared to what
just look at the financial mess we're in because of the control of federal financial institutions over 100 years. That's just completely obliterated our dollar, and we think that supposedly they've got the competency to even help us in the most important aspect of our life, which is the economy. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't disagree with you.
All right, let's
take other questions.
Yeah, if you'll hold on to that thought, because we're going to take a quick break. We're up against the hour here, and we'll be back in just a minute. Don't go away. You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show tonight. Boy, what a heavy conversation tonight. Sometimes we have some really, really heavy stuff on here, and tonight is one of them. Stuff that is really, this is the meat of what we need to do, and the steps that I think the very first thing is to know. And I think a lot of us don't know, and I believe that is by seriously, it's by design. Stupid people or dumb people are easier to control. Stupid was a bad word, I apologize. But dumb people are easier to control. Be right back.
Do you need toner for your Epson, Hewlett-Packard, Canon, Brother, Apple, or Sharp printers? Look no further than Laser Technologies. In business for over 20 years, they offer the lowest prices on toner on the web. They can also repair your laser printers and toners fast and easy. Call their expert staff today at 561-792-9600 or email us at service@laser-technologies.com for all your toner needs. All toner is shipped nationwide. Why wait? Get the lowest prices on toner. Call or email us today.
Grace has some pretty stellar arms, like Serena Williams good, but her face is pretty disgusting.
Someone please tell him to go back into his closet and leave us alone.
Brittany's face is so stupid and I hate her so much. It's like a scientist created her in a lab to annoy humanity and didn't even do that good of a job.
Megan reminds me of a troll doll that came to life intent on killing us with her stupidity.
Why is Grace's head so big? It definitely has nothing to do with how smart she is and probably everything to do with how bloated she is.
He's so funny. Just kidding. Who would find this disfigured flamingo funny?
Never post a selfie of yourself. You look so ugly.
The only reason you have so many views is because we think you're a freak and we can't look away.
Megan is the main reason that the world sucks so much.
I would rather get cancer than listen to another Trevor Moran song.
You are a mistake. You should have never been born.
Drown yourself in a shallow puddle, please.
Wow, I hope she's sterile.
These really stopped being funny a long time ago.
You're so much more than the things that people say about you.
Those people have no right to say cruel things to you to make themselves feel better.
It's okay that you sound different than everyone else.
That's what makes you so special.
We will not tolerate it. We will not tolerate it.
We will not tolerate it.
We will not tolerate it.
Every day, people make me feel like I stand out simply because of the way that I look.
Every day, people make me feel small.
Every day, I face the cruel words of bullying.
And every day, people tell me that I'm brave for enduring this humiliation.
But we're not the brave ones.
It's the ones that say no to the bullying.
The witnesses.
If we all join together, there's nothing that we can't do.
We will no longer be the silent majority.
When we see bullying online,
We will let the world know that we're going to take action with the eye.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
Our actions will overpower cruel words.
I am a witness.
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 There is power in words.
But it's nothing compared to the power of the actions that we put behind our words.
Visit eyewitnessbullying.org to learn more.
I am a witness, and so are you.
I'm gonna stand by you.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
We have ignition. Strap in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rat hole goes.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscala, every Saturday night on the LNM Network from 9 p.m. to midnight. And now your host, Riscala.
All right, we are back. It is the Red Pill Reality Show, an honor and a privilege to have you listen in. And a little bit of problem with the board there. Okay, an honor and a privilege to have you listen in. And tonight I have David Callihan and I have John Ainsworth with me. And if you're just tuning in and you've missed the earlier part of the show, you can always catch up on the archives. They are located in our Facebook page. If you go to the Facebook page, Red Pill Reality Show, you'll find a listing of all the different archives there. So anything that you've missed, you can follow up there. Greatly appreciate each and every one of you who help us do what we do, because without you, we wouldn't be here. So please tell your friends about the LNM Network. You can go to the LNM Network, latenightinthemidlands.com. We got a free chat room there, and tell your friends, because this is the kind of stuff that you're not going to find just anywhere. You're certainly not going to find it on that crazy little thing you call TV. It's not information that I think, my personal opinion, it's not information that people in government want you to know because they know that they're doing wrong. And as long as you're ignorant, I used the word stupid prior to the commercial. I want to apologize for that. That's not really what I meant. Ignorant is what I wanted to say. If we're ignorant, and ignorant people are easy to control because you don't know what your rights are. You don't know where the envelope ends and begins. And people like John and David who come in and kind of help us, give us a better understanding of what's going on. And this is vital to each one of our lives. This isn't something that's a theory. This isn't something that we're pulling out of the clouds and claiming for ourselves. This is what our nation was founded on. And we must, if we, I've said this many times, if you're going to be a citizen of the United States, you have a responsibility that goes with that. Part of that responsibility is to hold your government accountable. Otherwise, we're just going to be in a mess, and that's exactly where we find ourselves today, in an absolute mess, where you have people within our government openly stating that they're going to disarm you. In fact, if I remember right, the words that he said was, "Hell yes, we're going to disarm you." When you have a situation like that, you don't have a government for the people, by the people. And you certainly don't have a representative who is supposed to be doing their job under contract, and that is to defend your right to defend yourself. All right, we are back. Welcome back, David. Thank you for calling in tonight. I greatly appreciate it. John, what a great amount of information. What a treasure chest full of information. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you having us on.
We're both glad to be here.
Any other questions that you have, Dave?
Not any particular questions. You made an interesting comment. Words have meaning. Ideas have consequences, is that famous book by Richard Weaver. The title, people quote the title all the time. Probably most of them haven't read it. I've read the book. It's pretty amazing. But you said that if we are citizens of the United States, we've got to take our responsibility seriously. It might be that we need to even think through the nuances of what we say. We probably need to talk about ourselves as being American citizens, not citizens of the United States. In terms of what John is helping us to understand here, there is a difference. And then citizens of the state in which we reside, because apparently the whole crux of his thesis, the whole premise of his argument, is that is not a term of art that has been consistent with the entire history of our country, but something that was put in place for a nefarious purpose in the mid-1800s, the later part of the mid-1800s, for the purposes of denying us our powers, our rights, our privileges, our immunities, and our duties as citizens in our country, and gave a tremendous amount of power to Congress that really was done through an underhanded and nefarious means. That's what I'm learning over the course of the last few weeks. And the implications of that in terms of the things that I've studied and the things we talked about before John got on the phone, there's incredible ramifications from the stuff we're talking about tonight. And I think of it like the tip of the iceberg. We're just touching the surface of how deep the rabbit hole goes, as your song said. And so, that's my thoughts. I would hope that there'd be some people that might want to ask some questions. I think it would be great to get some thoughts from some of the listening audience. If there aren't any at the moment, we encourage them to call in. Because, if I could, we can go on.
Yeah, go ahead,
John.
Yeah, if I can interject a couple things. One is we see right now the hurdle. I mean, this huge hurdle we've got to overcome, which is knowing our history. The hurdle we have with this concept is versus what you can do with most people. Like most people, if you want to talk about problems in the government with the Second Amendment, you don't have to give them a whole history of the Second Amendment. They already know all the foundational issues, and you can start going forward on an in-depth topic from the common foundation of knowledge. What we've got is we've got to teach people the history to get the foundation of knowledge, just so you can start going forward. And then I'm also going to clear up the U.S. citizenship issue. Yeah, right now, I mean, the term U.S. citizen was loosely used in the United States prior to the 14th Amendment. But what most people were they were citizens of one of the several United States, were state citizens. But there were also United States citizens in two aspects of the word prior to the 14th Amendment. One was the people that lived in the territories. If you lived in an unincorporated territory that hadn't become a state yet, you were technically a citizen of the United States. You were a citizen subject to Congress. They passed the laws. They protected you. That's who you were. And then also on a international level, when France or someone like that looks at the United States, they look at all of us as United States citizens in the aspect of, if we're going to travel there, we need like nowadays, you get a passport. If you have a passport to go to another country, it's going to come from the United States, because that's one of the things the United States government has authority to do, is to regulate these treaties and things like this with other nations, and they consider us a United States citizen. But domestically, we are a citizen of one of the several United States. Does that help?
I think
Absolutely.
Because of what they did in all of this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, was this their way of removing sovereignty away from everybody?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Let me give you a couple quotes here. I was talking a little bit ago about the Committee of 15 on Reconstruction, and this concept of nationalizing citizenship. Well, actually, I'm going to go to James G. Blaine's quote. James G. Blaine was one of the congressmen who's one of the radical Republicans in Congress. And he loved the 14th Amendment, and he wrote his autobiography. He talks about the 14th Amendment. And here's what James G. Blaine had to say. In his autobiography, 20 Years of Congress, this was published in 1884. He says, as the vicious theory of state rights had been constantly at enmity with the true spirit of nationality, the organic law of the Republic, which is the Constitution, should be so amended that no standing room for the heresy of state rights would be left. And then he goes on the same page, and he says the first section of the constitutional amendment, talking about the 14th Amendment, which includes these invaluable provisions, is in fact a new charter of liberty to the citizens of the United States, is the utter destruction of the pestilent heresy of state rights, which constantly menace the prosperity and even the existence of the Republic, and is the formal bestowment of nationality upon the wise federal system. So, I mean, two times on one page, he says that the object of the 14th Amendment was to rid this nation of the pestilent heresy of state rights. And
that's really ironic, John, because even to this day, I've been in conversations with hundreds of people all across the country that I've worked with, talking about that states' rights is still it's a principle of the country. And what you're implying here is that this guy said that the death knell of it was the 14th Amendment.
Oh, he clearly said that. Lots of people said it. He's just one of the ones that I happen to have the quote in front of me on. People have the illusion that we have state rights. This is where I was getting at of like I said, about with the issue of abortion, or the issue of prayer in school, or the issue of display of 10 Commandments on city property. Those things are controlled by the national government. They're controlled by the 14th Amendment. They're not controlled on a state level to where the people of the states can say it. Now, a lot of people say, well, we still have states' rights, because if we want to change our speed limit from 65 to 75, the federal government can't say anything about it. Well, that's not really a state right. I mean, that's nothing more than the power of what a county or a city has in a state. They can do different things, but they just can't violate what the state says to do. But they can arrange their affairs and do all sorts of things, but that's not state rights. That's just arranging your affairs under the laws that exist.
Uh-huh.
So it was about removing the sovereignty, because if we retained our sovereignty, we could tell them to go basically pound sand, right?
Oh, absolutely. They would have no authority in these states. They would have no authority to tax. They would have no individuals. They would have authority to tax things that are on a national level. If you were involved in international shipping or something of that nature, but they lose everything. I mean, it's like no person alive today has lived in the United States as a free person, the way our founders did. We have been occupied by the federal government through Reconstruction, and it's a hostile occupation. They will not allow us, if we think that we should have prayer in school, they will not allow that. They will allow people's lives to be ruined if they bring Bibles into schools. I mean, it is a hostile occupation to where we cannot exercise our free will in the states anymore.
Wow.
We go against the 14th Amendment, these civil rights or these national rights created through the 14th Amendment. And if you look at these national rights we're talking about, you will see that none of them are rights that come from God. They're all rights that oppose God. Take prayer out of school. We're going to have abortion. We're going to say, gay marriage issues. We're going to say you can't have a display of anything of God on any public ground anywhere or any public prayers. I mean, every bit of this is the official implementation of ungodliness and immorality.
Many years ago,
as they say, you'll either be ruled by God or you'll be ruled by tyrants. You have to take a
True.
choice.
Many years ago, when I joined the Air Force, one of the things that happened to me as I was growing up, we had, like many children have, fire drills. But we not only had fire drills, we had, I don't remember what we called them, bombing drills, whatever. We a certain siren would go off, and we would get up under our desk and put our head between our knees. And it was a joke. We used to joke about put your head between your knees and kiss your butt goodbye. But that's what we would do, and that really put a fear in me, a mental fear in me. Imagine going to elementary school and then this occurring. So anyway, as I got older, this is something that stuck with me. I was in the Air Force serving during the Vietnam War. It was 1971, and one of the things that occurred was our training instructor was trying to teach us a lesson. The lesson was don't always believe what you hear and what you read and what you see. He walked in one day with a newspaper with a false front, so it looked like a real newspaper, and the false front was limited nuclear action or something like that happening in Vietnam. We're all standing there in the position of attention. I couldn't take it. I broke down, started crying. Because this was my greatest fear that this would come to pass. So I learned at an early age, don't always believe what you hear and read and see, and that ignorance plays a big part of the ability to deceive somebody. And that's what I see today. I see a lot of ignorance, and the ability for them to deceive us is because of this system that continues to perpetuate ignorance.
I can't say anything against it. That's exactly what they're doing.
No, it's our biggest challenge is to be able to give people the information that they need. Well, we have two challenges. One is we've got to get people to get out of the circuses and bread mode, where the entitlement mentality that is just pervasive in our country, and get them to realize, look, we keep going down the road we're going, it's over. We have to have good people being willing to learn what they need to know and then be willing to apply what they've learned in order that we're going to see things change. The goodness is we don't need a lot of people. And John, you might want, I think you could probably address that a little bit. This doesn't mean that we've got to get the vast majority to join.
Mm-hmm.
There's principles that go along with this that we could go into. But the point is that it takes a committed people that is really willing to do what needs to be done. And maybe, John, that would be a place to go here.
I've heard as little as 3% can make the difference. Correct me if I'm wrong, John.
Well, I would take it even lower than that. I would say 3% is the number we use a lot of times in the American Revolution of how many people went in arms to fight the British. But I would say in this day and age, you could probably get 1/2 of 1% of the people. And the reason being that this is not an armed conflict. This is just a legal argument. And the issue is how do you pressure the government to prove, like I said, when I go into court and say, okay, prove you're a legitimate state, you're lawfully created. Well, if there's just 10 people there, which was about the number we normally have, they can just roll right over the top of us. But if we had 1/2 of 1% of the people of North Carolina, which would be like 35,000 people, outside the courthouse saying, prove your lawfulness, because again, this isn't an armed conflict. We have to, which is another thing that I need to talk a little bit about is people are so frustrated today. I have to calm people down all the time who say, hey man, this is time to break out the guns. I'm like, no, it's not. It is not. You have an obligation to exhaust your remedies before that, and no one is participating in lawful government. No one is swearing an oath of allegiance to a legitimate state. You're just frustrated in this usurping state that pretends like it gives you constitutional rights, and you see it's not. So we have an obligation to stand up, to exercise our rights. If we don't exercise them, we lose them. And we have a right to be a state citizen if we want the rights that come with a state citizen. And most of us look at the Constitution and say, oh, I have those rights. Well, no, a United States citizen does not have those rights. Those rights are for state citizens. Well, actually, they're not rights granted in the Constitution. They're limitations on the federal government. But I would say 1/2 of 1%, if you got that many people, you would have reached the critical mass that would make all this stuff happen. Just another real quick trivia thing to throw out to show how we're all deceived is just looking at the American Civil War. A lot of people think it was the slave states against the free states, the North against the South. And most people don't even realize that 30% of the slave states fought for the North. And so how could you have such an inconvenient fact not be taught? Well, the way they did it is they never said it was what they talked about was the slave states that seceded, and they don't talk about the slave states that did not secede, which was Kentucky and Missouri and Delaware and Maryland and West Virginia. So technically 4.5 slave states fought for the North. So what do they do in history books? Well, they don't say that they were slave states that didn't secede. They say, oh, these were the border states. And they just go into these phrases that people don't catch exactly what it is, so they can be successfully miseducated to think the war was between the slave states and the free states.
Deception. It's deception. There's no
Let
way.
me also throw another piece of history just to kind of add more color to the conversation, because John's area of expertise is the time around the Civil War. My studies have been the Revolutionary War and the periods just prior to. And one of the things that we don't know from that period of history is that, and this goes to the issue of the people's participation in government. If you go back and study the founding generation, I don't even like to call them the founding fathers because that labels about 150 of them out of hundreds of thousands that participated, in my opinion, from what I've studied. And the point is that they actually instituted the establishment of a new government through the processes of election and conventions and establishing of what they called resolves back in the day, where they actually sat down as people in local communities and put together their grievances and put them into a form of a document called resolves, took those to county conventions, had a system of parliamentary procedure where they put those resolves into a document at the county level. You may have heard of the Mecklenburg resolves, the Fairfax resolves. Those were literally county-based documents that the people themselves created. And then they went to the level of provincial conventions. Patrick Henry's famous speech was given at the Second Provincial Convention of the Association of Virginia, and wasn't at the House of Burgesses like many people think. And then those documents came together to be submitted to the First Continental Congress for the purposes of creating a new government. The point I'm making is that if we as the people understood the powers and the precedents that we have as to how we can affect our society through proper legal means. It doesn't take a lot of effort as long as we can figure out how to get the people into a proper mindset to do so. That's, I think, another thing that we need to think about tonight.
Yeah, and to tag on to that is, the principle that our founders were operating off of when they were establishing these new governments. Technically, they would have no right to establish a new government unless there's violation of their rights. The violation of their rights is what gives them the right to establish a new government, because they have no obligation to be abused by a government that is there to protect their rights. So
the term of art they used all over and over again was that they were becoming enslaved. Well, shoot.
They were.
Yeah.
If we don't feel that today, what do we feel?
Well, the scary part about that, David, is that there are people who don't, who would say to you, "You're crazy. I'm free."
Well, there's a lot of people starting to get some impression of it. I think it's more than it has been in the past. So
I agree.
We got to keep blowing the horn, if you know what I'm saying.
I agree. Absolutely.
Those ones that are claiming they're free, I'm not sure they need to be a part of what we're doing.
Well,
Well,
there were the
their
Tories
version,
and there were the Patriots back in the day, right?
their version of free is what they've been. Again, it's we talk about schooling and indoctrination. It's what they've been conditioned to think. There is a huge lack of think for yourself is what I see happening. We don't think for ourselves, and many who want to get to the truth don't have truly an open mind. They don't listen to what's available. If at the first couple of seconds of what they hear they don't like, whether it's true or not, they don't like it, just shut it off and go away and go somewhere else. The attention span is like so short, unless it's something very sweet. Yeah. Unless it's something that the ears want to hear, sweet to the ears. Something like what we're talking about tonight, a lot of people tune it out. They don't, it's too difficult for them to understand it because, again, I think it's because of a system that's been in place for a long time. So we're not only fighting to get people to be aware of what's going on, we're fighting a system by a very sick, twisted, small group of people when you think about it in the overall scheme of things. There's not very many of them, but they are very good at what they do. They've been at it for a very long time. They don't think the way that we think. The average person who is honest at heart just thinks everybody else is honest at heart. They can't imagine that there would be somebody out there who would play these sick, twisted mental games with people in their lives for the sake of having power over them. They just, some of them just can't wrap their mind around that. But this is what's going on. And tonight has been a real eye-opener, I can't thank you enough for the information, John. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you opening up your forum to allow us to talk about it.
Yeah, and I'm grateful to David. David is the one who said, "Yeah, we might be able to get him on." I said, "Certainly, please." I think it would be very interesting to share with the listeners and the idea of how the 14th Amendment came to be, and the wedge, if you will, the political wedge, if that's a correct word to use, to be able to stick that in their door and stop it, from opening further. This may be a vital way for us to be able to get in there and to be able to do that. I had no idea when David said you were going to talk a little bit about the 14th Amendment, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't know 14th. So I went and looked it up. I go, we're going to talk about freeing people. We're going to make slaves citizens. Okay, all right, well, that's cool. Well, maybe it's got an underlying, and it certainly did. It had an underlying meaning, and I'm ever so grateful for that. David, anything else you want to bring up?
Well, let's just hit this point real quick, and that is you want to come up with some kind of a takeaway that really would be helpful for people, I think. And so I know the answer to this, but John is way better able to articulate it than me. So, John, let's suppose there's folks on this call tonight that are from different parts of the country. I know some. I mean, I invited many of my friends to sit in and listen, and I know some of the people from your organization are sitting and listening in too. And so I guess the question that we'd want to come away with is how easy, and I use that term in a relative sense, is it for a group of people in Iowa or North Dakota or Missouri to actually implement the first steps of what would be required for us to get back to where we have our legitimate freedom again through having the sovereignty of the state. What would be how simple could that happen? What number of people would need to be involved? What would be a process just in a Reader's Digest kind of a way to move something like this forward in a state that doesn't have it yet?
Well, that's a great question. Well, number one, get with us at America's Remedy, but what the direction we're going to take you is you have to have an understanding of what Reconstruction and the nationalization of citizenship did in the 14th Amendment. Because a lot of people say, well, Reconstruction just affected those 10 states that were directly affected by military control to change their forms of government. So it doesn't affect us in Iowa. It doesn't affect us. Well, what you got to remember is what was the purpose of Reconstruction? Was to pass the 14th Amendment, which was going to nationalize citizenship. In other words, rid your state of Iowa, North Dakota, California, rid all those states of state citizens. And now your rights don't come from you anymore. They come from the national government. So all states have been reconstructed. So by the passage of the 14th Amendment, or the recognition of the passage of the 14th Amendment being valid, in knowing that the 14th Amendment was not valid, that replacing all the citizens of every single state with from state citizens to United States citizens was not a valid concept, then what they would have to do is go back to their original Constitution the day the 14th Amendment was ratified. Because at that point, in law, their state was no longer operated by state citizens. They were totally under the direct control of the United States government. So they can go back to that point in time. So this is a movement based upon knowledge, not on emotion. We're not trying to get people involved who can be easily manipulated by their emotions. We want people who can look at this argument, know it, understand it, and know they have an absolute right to reestablish their states. The amount of people it takes, heck, it doesn't take that many. We recommend a minimum of 10 because you need 10 people to swear an allegiance. And we'll just pick Iowa since it's an easy state to pick. You need 10 people in Iowa that would swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution of Iowa up to the point of 1868 when the 14th Amendment was supposedly ratified and put into place. That's where their oath would be. They would need to do a declaration of reestablishment. That's what we did here in North Carolina. We declared we're reestablishing. We're doing it above board. We're not, just like the founding fathers with the Declaration of Independence. And you mentioned earlier the Mecklenburg. You stated resolves, but it was a Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence, which was put out a year before the Federal Declaration of Independence, put out in 1775. May 20th, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
But they gave notice. None of this was done privately. This was done, hey, because you have abused rights. That's what the Mecklenburg Declaration did. That's what the National Declaration of Independence did. You abuse these rights. We are, therefore, right ought to be free and independent people, and we're making it known to a candid world. Well, we're doing the same thing. We're doing a Declaration of Reestablishment. The Reconstruction Acts, the federal government had no authority to annul states. We've counted 15 violations of the Constitution that allowed for the Reconstruction Act to be considered ratified. And all you have to do is have one unconstitutional act, and it makes it a nullity. We've got 15. And if we get people to say, I don't recognize unconstitutional acts as being valid and binding, I have a right to reestablish, and they can start reestablishing, they get with us because there's in this patriot movement, this time we live in, there's a lot of people who are declaring that they're citizens of a lawful state, and they're basing it off of all sorts of different things. You've got to have the right legal argument. You got to have the legal argument that it's based upon the unconstitutionality of Reconstruction. There's a huge movement out there saying, oh, well, the Constitution was a con job. The last form of lawful government we had was under the Articles of Confederation. We don't recognize that as a valid legal argument. And if you want to do that, then this is not for you. You know, this is a legal argument for every state in this lane that we've got right here. And we're looking for people who want to get their freedom back. This isn't really just about us. And the amount of skin in the game, I mean, look what our founders put on the line. You know,
Really?
they put their lives, fortune, sacred honor. All we're doing is saying, who's willing to stand up for a legal argument?
Really?
Let's get some backbone in this country again. Heck, we've got Virginia reestablishing right now, and it's the motivated crowd is 90% women. Which I'm grateful for Virginia. I'm grateful for every one of those women doing it. But where are the men in this country? Where are the men to stand up? You know, women shouldn't be fighting men's battles. We're supposed to be protecting the women. And I know that's all
upside
sexist
down.
and it shouldn't
It's
be
all
said
upside
anymore,
down.
but I don't believe all that stuff.
It's all
But yeah,
upside
we
down.
should get
Good.
bold.
Yeah. John, do you fear retaliation? I mean, you know, we know that there are people that are in serving in government that are absolutely criminal. Do you fear retaliation from them?
Do I fear it? No. Do I think that it could happen? Well, yeah. You got to remember, when we did our Declaration of Reestablishment back in we did this in 1997, December. So really, 1998 was our first full year of this. And you know, within days, we ended up having SBI, State Bureau of Investigation, people come to my house with our declarations in their hand, wanting to know about this, that, and the other thing. I've got a whole bunch of stories I could go through, which we don't have time for today. But the issue is we've got a legal argument. I'm not going out there. Okay, people say, "Oh, you're anti-government." We're not anti-government. We're pro-government.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're revolutionaries then. No, we're not revolutionaries. We're counter-revolutionaries. The revolution was Reconstruction. That's what radically changed our form of government. We're counter-revolutionaries. We're trying to get back to what the Constitution had in place. So we feel that if you, and the other concept is, once you see this, you can't unsee it. There's no way I could ever go back and say, oh, okay, I recognize you guys as a ballot when I know to the core of my being, they're not. I can't do it. I can't do that as a man. I can't do that as a father. I can't do that as a husband. I can't do it. I can't go back and just think.
There's one thing that we've kind of not really touched on at all, and that is the essence of all of this, the purpose of doing all of this, really, in my book, is for our future generations. What are we going to leave those who are going to be our future leaders? Because the way things are going right now, they're not going to be very intelligent. They are purposely being dumbed down. They are purposely being enslaved. They are purposely being taught what tyranny and fascism is a normality in life. And unless we can put a stop to this insanity, this is what we're leaving our kids.
Absolutely.
There's another component of it too, and obviously, I think probably is at the crux of the matter. And John alluded to it, and that is the spiritual component of this. The fact of our base of our belief in the Almighty God, and we live in a society where the Father and the Son have given us our freedom, and that we have the blessings of liberty because of the fact that we were endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. And everything in the foundation of where our country came about was rooted in the biblical concepts of a divine Creator who has given us the privileges of that we take for granted. And we live in a society today where I believe we've got to have another great awakening in this country, or we're
doomed
succumb.
if we don't. Yeah, I agree.
So ultimately, it's a spiritual issue that we're addressing here. In the the final analysis, in my mind, where Christianity is intelligent and is based on people using the minds and loving God with their mind and trying to figure out how to make things bring things to a place of restoration, a place of renovation, and the term used back in the days of the Reformation. We need those kinds things to happen from a spiritual point of view in this country badly. We are a
I'm
lawless society today.
We are. I'm 100% convinced that it's going to take a revival. I mean, some of the biggest hurdles we always get in this movement is, oh gosh, guys, you got to take God out of this stuff, and you'll get a whole lot more people. And this is not a popularity movement. It's not about being popular and getting the most amount of people. It's about getting the right people. It's about getting people who want to put us back on a godly foundation, who wants to put the Constitution back in place as it was. That's who we're looking for. We're not trying to get the masses. Just like the Founding Fathers with the American Revolution. That was not a popular movement, but it was a moral, right, and just movement. And that's what we're about.
I look at the LBGTXYZWP, whatever it is, movement, and you look at how many of those people are actually a part of our society with regard to being what they practice, and you see that the percentage of those numbers are very, very, very small percentage of our society are these people, yet they're blasted in your face almost daily about their rights and this and that and the other. That's the kind of commitment that got them to where they are. That's the kind of commitment that we need on our side in order to regain this country again. The idea that we have to look to our government for permission for a lot of the stuff that's going on is just not accurate. They simply don't have the authority on many of the things that they're doing. They just don't have it. And if they don't have it, we allow them to keep it because we are ignorant. In many cases, we are ignorant. And I think that part of the resolution to this is the idea that first we become aware and then we become educated. And it's people like Dave and John that can help us do that. And I'm so appreciative to the both of you tonight. I've learned a tremendous amount. I don't know if I'm going to be able to sleep tonight with all this stuff running through my head.
Pascal, if I could just say this, is that another aspect of what we're doing is we're trying to give people hope. People are getting just totally,
beat up.
Apathetic. They don't know what to do.
Yeah, it is. It's frustrating.
What we want to do is give people a solid ground upon which they can stand. What's something solid you can stand on? What's a legal position? Something right, moral, just, that you can stand on and you can say, this is the ground I'm claiming. I'm not budging. And we feel this is a very hopeful message of how to get this country back, how to get it back potentially without any violence. The violence would only come from the other side. It wouldn't come from us. But it's a message of hope and a solid foundation.
Yep. It is.
Go ahead, Dave.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I was trying to pull up something while we were talking over the last 10 minutes. I've got a really slow internet connection. But when you were talking, John, about different states getting involved, I'm in Florida, and you challenged me last week when we were talking about the voter registration. And to show you just how, and I know I'm kind of going down a little bit of a diversion here, but about how our citizenship is not state citizenship, it's national citizenship. And so you had me go check out my local voter registration form and found that it says in the state of Florida, you have to acknowledge you're a citizen of the United States and a resident of the state of Florida. So I was thinking while you were talking, let me go to a northern state. So I went and pulled up the registration form for the state of New York. And the qualifications are you a citizen of the United States? And will you be 18 years of age or older on or before Election Day? No question about the state whatsoever.
Interesting. Right. Wow.
So changed.
Well, so my question is, did the constitutions all get altered after the Reconstruction Act in every state?
No. The people of the northern states didn't really. They thought nothing changed. They thought it was really just a punishment to the southern states, because you got to remember what they did is the new governments, they said all free blacks could vote in these southern states. Now, it did not give blacks the right to vote in any northern states. And
they had the black codes up there?
Oh, they had black codes in all the northern states too. In fact, I think Oregon, black.
Oregon kicked all the blacks out.
Yeah, they couldn't even come to the state. Illinois implemented something very similar to that. Indiana was pretty bad too. But again, these are all ancillary issues of, it's good to know this so that you see that it's not just these southern states. It's what they always want to point to. This was a little bit everywhere. I forgot where I was going. What were we talking about? It's getting late.
Talking about the constitutions of the North. Being altered.
Yeah, they weren't altered. The people just thought that it was a punishment to the South of having black suffrage there, but they didn't have it in their states, and they just kind of laughed it off. They didn't realize it wasn't about black suffrage; it was about nationalization of citizenship, and they were nationalized too. And they got to act like they had all that till court cases started defining what rights were associated with the 14th Amendment. And it slowly became very apparent that they had lost all their rights too. They did not really realize it as a body of people. I think some of the legislators knew what it did, but I think the average person did not. They thought it was.
Well, and Congress obviously put it in place. Congress would just have passed laws which forced the states to go down certain roads. I talk about the Dick Law of 1903 and how that changed our militia. They just changed the laws with the authority to do so, apparently, right?
Right. Yeah, and again, it's just they did not change it. It was very stealthily done to the northern states, but now we see the obvious ramifications of it, what it actually did, and praise the Lord, there is remedy in this thing for the northern states, the southern states, and the states that were created afterwards.
That's outstanding.
All right. Well, we're running.
I'm loving it, man.
Go ahead. Go ahead, John.
I just said I'm loving it. I'm loving this reestablishment stuff. It's knowing what the problem is just gives you so much relief.
It gives me
there's going to be further stuff to throw into the bag, John. I'm telling you, as we move forward.
Oh, I know.
I think
I'm not delusional about this.
Part of
no, I mean in a positive sense, not just a negative sense. I think we've got remedies, things that we can implement that will have the ability to give people their power back, and that's what this is all about. We need a new burst of energy. A lot of people feel like you can't fight City Hall. They tried and came up short, and I think we've got some things here that could really invigorate and bring life back into society, starting, by the way, with economic issues and things that are coming down the pike here shortly as well. So I'm pretty excited about where this is all going to go.
Exhaust your remedies.
Exactly.
All right. So we're kind of winding down here. If you want to call in, you're running out of time. 561-440-5174. I've got a bunch of people. I've got several people on Facebook who have contacted me. They're listening. Angel's listening. Thank you, Angel. She said she's with a bunch of her friends listening.
Hey, Angel.
I've got one of my other listeners, Jeff, says he's listening. Hello, Jeff. But for whatever reason, we're not getting a call. So anyway, this is your last opportunity because we're running out of time. 561-440-5174 if you have a question or comment for John or David, either one. A tremendous amount of information. This is why I love doing what I do. I firmly believe that if you're somebody who knows something and it can help change someone else's life, you have a responsibility as a human being to bring that about, to just share the knowledge. Whether they believe it or not, that's up to them. But at least you've done your part and you've shared that knowledge. And that's what both of these individuals have done tonight. They've taken the knowledge that they have learned over the years and they've shared it with us. And those are the kind of people I like to surround myself with. I don't pretend to know everything. I don't think anybody knows everything. But I believe when we come together in situations like tonight, we certainly learn a heck of a lot more than we do fighting with each other and arguing with each other over silliness. I've learned so much tonight. I'm telling you, it's just all these ideas running through my head. So the website, let me see. The website is americasremedy.com, and the man's name is John Ainsworth. You can reach him there, and Last opportunity if you want to call in, because we're winding down rapidly. Any last thoughts before you go there, David?
Yeah, I'd like to just say, the thing about all this, what you just said about John's website, this is all for naught. If people listen tonight and they go, oh, this was a nice show and we've learned a few things, but it doesn't do anything. And I'd like to, kind of point to the concept that we've really lost in our society of civic duty.
Amen.
And the fact that we have an obligation. I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I'm now learning that some of that support and defend was probably ignorantly misunderstood. And but the point is that the true Constitution, the things that it really stands for, that we need to adjust and need to correct, and the Constitution of my state. Interesting, if you're a voter in the state of Florida, when you signed your voter registration card, you signed an oath to the Constitution of the United States and the state of Florida. And that's just by being a voter. And most people don't realize that they took that oath. But the point is, we need to now take an obligation and duty to learn what we need to know about the way our government really operates, and where if we're not willing to correct the misfeasances, the malfeasances, the things that have been done inappropriately, if we're not willing to stand up and fix what we now see is there, we're going to get what's coming to us. And it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, what's coming is not nice.
There's consequences coming down the pike here, and willful ignorance is the worst kind of ignorance. When you learn something new and you don't want to go there, then we're going to get exactly what's coming to us. And so I really encourage people. I should say it with a positive spin. We've got an opportunity to learn things, and there's things that John's organization is putting together. John and I have talked a bit. I've shared a few things with John. I think that there's additional teeth that we can put to this thing and really give the people back their authority and possibly mitigate things that people see are coming at us, economic dislocation that might be coming down the road.
Yeah.
And how can we be ready for that kind of thing? There's all kinds of ramifications of all this. But my encouragement is, let's start coming together, joining in our communities, figure out how we can be a part of an answer here. And shoot, it only takes 10 people in a state to start putting something in place that could literally change the entire society. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So that's my thought.
Well, thank you, David. And bear with me here while I give John the opportunity. John, before we go, any parting thoughts?
Well, I would say, kind of tag along what Dave said, that, we've got this opportunity. People who are listening, my position really is, if you don't participate in lawful government, then you really have no right to complain.
Amen.
A lot of people say if you don't vote, you have no right to complain, when in fact that's just the opposite. If you do vote in that system, you're saying I accept it as legitimate and lawful. We say vote in lawful states, not illegal states, unconstitutional states. But we've got this opportunity. We've got a solid foundation. We're excited about it. I just appreciate people that open up their venues of media like you have, Muscala, and to help us get this stuff out. But yeah, we just can't be armchair quarterbacks. We've got to get people participating in this thing. And like I said, it's not that many. It really does not take that many, but it is not a popularity contest. We're not trying to get volumes of people. We want to get the right people. We want to get people willing to stand up. And appreciate David also. I haven't said that tonight. Dave, thank you for your interest and the conversations we've had, and for getting this information on the program.
I like to say, when I finish up conversations, we will win. I really believe it. I believe that the good people will win if we are willing to do what needs to be required.
I agree.
Because we're not doing this alone. This is bigger than the sum total of all of us.
Oh, yeah.
But fortunately, we have a source that can give us the victory, can give us success if we're willing to just do our part and really be committed to it with our lives and our fortunes. And if we're willing to take that commitment, then I believe we can make something happen. So
I agree.
Anyway, that's my thought.
Well, thank you, David. I greatly appreciate it. I'm looking forward to having you back on again. Every conversation I've had with you has been just it's always learning, and that's one of the things I try to get people to do. You don't have to believe everything. Just listen and go verify for yourself. But if you're not willing to listen, if you're not open to listen, then you're not going to learn. And that's one of the key ingredients of doing it. John, thank you for your time. Greatly appreciate it, my friend. I wish you a wonderful weekend, what's left of it. I would love to have you back on for an update, by the way.
Oh, great. Yeah. Give me a call.
All right. I'll do that.
Be glad to come back.
All right, guys.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
John.
Thank you so much, both of you. Greatly appreciate it. All right, my friends, it is the Red Pill Reality Show you've been listening to, and if you've missed any part of the show, you can always go to the archives. You can find the archives on the Facebook page, and we'll have an archive up there probably tomorrow sometime. You can go listen to the archives there as well. In the meantime, we're about out of time. Let's see. We're just about out of time. In the meantime, we're going to fade out of here. I thank each and every one of you. Please remember that we are a listener-supported station, and we do need the help. We are at the end of the month, and again, we're running. It's very difficult to do this, and I've said many times, it's not about the money, but it is about the money. And when I say it's not about the money, think of it. We're asking for $5 for subscription. So it's not really, we're not trying to get rich off of your subscriptions. We're trying to get the bills paid. And, $5. If you want to call it a meal, that would be skipping a meal like at a McDonald's or something, if you even want to call that stuff food. But one time in a whole month, and look at what you get. Tonight there was so much bang for your buck tonight. Those of you who have helped us be where we are, thank you, because without you, we wouldn't have been able to do tonight. So tell your friends, and we're going to fade out of here. And see you tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow morning doing the fishing show. So if you're bored in the morning, I'll be doing the fishing show. Otherwise, I'll be back in a week. And God bless.
Take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Now, from sunny South Florida, it's the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscala. Every Saturday night from 9 p.m. to midnight on the L&M Network.